We never know where life will lead us or what may hinder us along the way. But while every day can feel like one big question mark, it doesn't have to. With the right insights, strategies, and solutions from Western and Southern Financial Group, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind.
What's pro football focus doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Pitt. We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
As a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Do you not understand that they are that way because you're Joe Flacco?
And you just like to discredit things that people deserve credit for.
That you can't possibly be expected to defend that.
Talk about the game, Sam. So who cares about what people think about us?
Yeah, I like football season, all the things that go with it.
Welcome into the PFF NFL Podcast. Sam Monson here again. Still no Steve. If you've been watching the Twitter account, you'll see Steve's busy in Palm Beach golfing, and it's not going too well from what I can tell. But
well, you showed me of him of golfing with clubs that were for children.
Yeah, well, no, they're not for children. They're for regular-sized human beings.
He just makes them look like it's for children? Okay, well, we need to get the guy. He needs to, like, duct tape two of those clubs just on top of each other or something, you know?
Yeah, he does. Anyway, more takes like that brought to us by Trevor Sikkema.
Hello.
Joining the show today. Newly fresh off your TV superstar debut appearance on GMFB. They're our competition, you know, because on Monday we go head-to-head with Good Morning Football.
What are you saying, like time slot? Well, you didn't have me on that time slot, so that's kind of on you guys.
One off is fine. I'm just saying that usually they're our competition. So I'm not sure how to feel.
Look,
about
if you would have invited me on the Monday show, it would have taken you guys to show over them, but you didn't invite me. I don't know what to tell you.
True. Anyway, you are co-host. How do we phrase this? Co-host of NFL Stock Exchange.
Indeed.
Fastest growing podcast west of the no, we're not even west of the east of the Mississippi.
Yeah, are we west or east?
East, right?
Oh, we got to be east.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
I think.
Just
I'm Irish. You're the guy.
We're Eastern time zone, so I've never had to say that about. I'm from like Tampa and Charlotte, and so like it's always been extremely easy. Right. So I just say east of the Mississippi, but yeah.
So you're a great person to come on talk draft. We had Mike Renner on yesterday, giving us all his takes, and now it's your turn.
Well, hopefully I don't blow it. That's how I approach everything in life. Hopefully I don't blow up.
I like it. But first, we got to hit the Western and Southern talk. The presenting sponsors there, the big plaque on the wall. The PFF NFL podcast is sponsored by Western and Southern Financial Group. While you focus on your roster moves, Western and Southern helps advance your money moves. Buying your first home, planning on starting a family, wondering how to make your money grow, Western and Southern's playbook of life insurance, investment, and retirement solutions helps you rest assured on game day. Team up to understand needs and address goals with a game plan built just for you. Get started at westernsouthern.com/PFF. So before we get into any of the draft stuff, I want to get your take on Baker Mayfield breaking his silence.
Yes.
Giving an interview.
Yes.
And look, we've talked a lot about Baker Mayfield on this podcast, so I think my opinion on him is fairly well known, but I want to hear what you thought of that whole interview thing.
Well, I didn't listen to the whole interview. I kind of just saw the bits and pieces of the quotes that everybody else saw on social media that were obviously the most buzzworthy things he said. So I don't have full context. But look, I think that if you just do 10,000-foot view or whatever, certainly Baker did not handle everything perfectly when he was with Cleveland, even before this past offseason. Like, I think that him playing as hurt as he did, like, I get it, man. You are trying to gut it out for the team, but you have to also realize that it was actively hurting both you and what the organization was trying to do, you playing that hurt. And I just think that even going back a little further with...
Isn't that on somebody else, though, other than Baker?
I think that we talk about that all the time. Like, it's supposed to be the coach's job to save the players from themselves, right?
Or an agent. Or, there's a lot of people there whose job it is to look after the player. Because it's like the concussion stuff, right? The player's always going to want to go out.
Right.
Somebody's job is to stop him from hurting himself by saying, no, like sit down. You're not going back out. We're taking your helmet away, and you're not going back out on the field because you just got nailed in the head.
And the agent part, has been the most confusing part to me the whole time. Is like, this dude's actively losing money for himself and for you guys and for everything. And I never really understood how that was going to be the best move. The only way that was going to get better is if his shoulder really started to feel better as the season went on. They made the playoffs, happened to win a game in the playoffs, and then you go, wow, look at what he did when he was hurt. Then I get it, you slingshot yourself into a big contract because you play the what-if imagination game. But I don't know. Look, I think Baker Mayfield can be a good quarterback in the NFL. Now, when I say good quarterback, I'm kind of also tapping into one of the arguments that we're seeing on Twitter this morning where it's like Derek Carr, Kirk Cousins, Ryan Tannehill, those kinds of quarterbacks. That's what I think Baker Mayfield can be. Like, Baker Mayfield, to me, what he can be is Derek Carr. And I don't think Derek Carr is bad. Like, I think Derek Carr can get you to the playoffs, maybe not in the AFC West because it's the greatest division in football, but like if he were in a different situation, like if Derek Carr would have had this Raiders team in the NFC North or something, or the NFC East, I think that he makes the playoffs, and I think that we talk about him as a good quarterback. But people, because he went number 1 overall, because he's very outgoing, because he is Baker Mayfield, they want him to be this greatest quarterback in the NFL. And I don't think he's ever going to be that. I don't think he's ever going to compare to those elite guys. I think he can be good, and that's where I still stand with him. I still think that he should have a chance to start in the NFL. Shoot, if Carson Wentz over here going for 2 third-round picks, like, how is Baker Mayfield not getting moved? That's kind of where I'm at.
It's worth pointing out that those guys that we're going to be comparing Baker Mayfield to, the Kirk Cousins, the Derek Carrs, the Carson Wentz, the Matt Ryans now, like that group of guys, they're all still getting paid.
Right.
Like, though everybody is sort of arguing for it, nobody is taking them up on the offer to be like, no, that guy's done. Time to move on and go get the rookie.
Right.
They're all re-upping them. They're all signing them to the giant extension in Derek Carr's case, the Kirk Cousins fully guaranteed deal. They're trading for Carson Wentz. They're trading for Matt Ryan. Like, people are going after those quarterbacks, even though we're fairly confident right now that those guys exist in this band of like 8 to 15, QB 8 to 15.
Did you see what he said about the Colts? Because I saw a little quote about the Colts, but I didn't see the full thing. I don't know
Baker?
if you did.
No.
Yeah, he said something about the Colts, and I think he had talked about when he wanted to go to Indianapolis, and Indianapolis choosing Matt Ryan over Baker Mayfield. I get it in a vacuum of short term, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody at this point would take Matt Ryan for next season over Baker Mayfield, but like, how much left does Matt Ryan have in the tank? Right? You're going to basically be in this exact same situation. And I think, I don't know if it's brilliant or if it's killing his career from Chris Ballard, but he will not commit to a long-term quarterback. He won't.
I think they're also in this situation now where you almost can't, right? Like, you've made this sort of, you've put your backs against the wall to the point where now you need it now. So you almost
that is how the roster is built, for sure.
So you have to grab the guy that's going to give you the best chance next year, because you might, if you screw it up and you go for a quarterback that's best long to medium term, but next year he's going to go, like, next year might not be as good. You don't have that, particularly now in the AFC.
Yeah,
you
but
don't have that room.
Yeah, but how much of a winning window do we think the Colts are really in?
I don't know.
I think the Colts are a good team, but you lose Matt Eberflus, right? And I think the roster, again, is good, and certainly with them coming from the AFC South, they have a chance to just win the division and get in the playoffs. But like, Colts versus Chiefs, Colts versus Chargers, Colts versus Bills, Colts versus Bengals, Ravens at their best. Like, who are we taking here? I don't know. I think that the Colts are probably a middle of the pack team. So is Matt Ryan going to get better?
Right.
It's kind of my thing. And bringing this all back to Baker, it's basically like, do the Colts just want to win and get to the point where they go, okay, all right, we made the playoffs, we got one and done, we got bounced, we made it into the playoffs, but like, hey, at least we made it, like, we're good? Or do they want to shoot for the stars? Because if they wanted to shoot for the stars, I thought they would have been a little bit more interested in Baker. But
so the other thing,
maybe that just goes to show what the league thinks about Baker.
The other thing I think that plays into that, and it's probably relevant to this interview, is if the stuff that came out about Carson Wentz, after he was traded, the kind of the scorched earth policy that everybody inside the Colts building appears to have taken,
right,
in terms of blowtorching that guy on the way out, like, terrible leader, disastrous locker room all this kind of stuff. They ripped that guy. It was a complete character assassination. And maybe it was by one guy, maybe it was by everybody, but whatever. They fairly well trashed him on the way out. If that's true in any way, shape, or form, even if it's half true, they are probably not looking at a guy like Baker Mayfield and sort of saying, let's try that again.
That's fair.
They're probably going, Matty Ice, model professional, arrives in the building off the jet.
They certainly would want that, yes.
That's who they want, right? They want the model quarterback, even if he's not as good.
And maybe Matt Ryan's got more in the tank than I think. I think he's a good quarterback here. I still really do. But in my mind, if things go well for Baker, which obviously we know now is a big if, that to me would line up with the Colts' actual potential winning window more than just let's make the playoffs right now.
Right.
And then kind of by the time our roster is actually maybe good enough to compete with the top 3 in the AFC, Matt Ryan won't be.
Because that, I think, is what's hampering Baker Mayfield as much as the on-field performance right now is the view of him as a pain in the ass.
Right. Oh, totally.
And part of the problem with the interview that he gave, it's like what seems to be a theme with Baker is, he's right, but sometimes being right isn't enough. Like, you need to understand when you might be right, but saying it out loud doesn't do you any favors, right? So Baker Mayfield, I think, is genuinely kind of the victim in this whole situation in terms of that dude played from week 2 onwards with some kind of injury, which it got worse week 6, I think. And then from like week 6 onwards, the dude was barely functioning, still went out there, gritted it out, and only got shut down right at the end of the season when they were done, right? And to me, it's admirable for him to attempt to do that. Somebody should have saved him from himself and shut him down.
Right.
So if you're Baker Mayfield,
he should have played like a couple of weeks. People would have been like, wow, look at this dude toughing it out. Get him the hell off the field.
Shut him down and be like, and that, like at the start of the season, we were expecting Baker Mayfield to have a career year, earn himself some form of giant extension, and be the Browns quarterback going forward. That year cost him that, and then it cost him his job because the Browns went out there and didn't do what you always said, what everybody was sort of saying they would do, right? Which is we put an asterisk next to this season because we know he was playing with the torn shoulder and we expect him to be better than that going forward. They were like, oh yeah, but look, suddenly Deshaun Watson's available. Let's just make that move instead. So if you're Baker, you're like, I went from giant $30 million a year extension, for over 5 years, whatever, like the payday, to I don't even have a job anymore. It's been taken by this dude who, let's be honest, has got some pretty serious issues himself.
Yeah.
And like, what the hell? And whether or not he was right about, I don't know whether he's telling the truth about, they lied to me, they told me one thing, did the other. But it's very difficult not to view Baker Mayfield as some form of victim in all this, right?
Yeah.
But saying it out loud on a podcast does you no favors whatsoever because you're already in, like, this is the one time where you actually look okay.
Right.
Like, you're not being blamed. It's somebody else's fault. And all you do by sort of coming out and going, yeah, dude, I got hosed. I got screwed, is everyone suddenly goes, that's a little bit, it's a little bit me,
I can understand why he feels like an animal being backed into a corner a little bit right now, because like to give you credit there,
but
I think that
all moral high ground by talking.
The time to do this would have been when you get to a new team, but unfortunately, like, it's so frustrating for him because I looked up the quote while you were talking. He simply says, like, oh, if he was betting where his next place would be, he said he would have bet Indianapolis before they traded for Matt Ryan. And it's like, you look around the league, what are the other options now? Seattle's basically the only one we talk about. And Pittsburgh's technically still open-ish, depending on what you think of Trubisky and what they're going to. But we figured they're going to go a QB in the draft instead. Carolina's there, but apparently Carolina's not interested. So you look around the league, and I think he just is super pissed off that he did get screwed, and now he.
But again, it feels
I don't know. Like, where is he going to go? When's he going to get traded?
I know that's the thing. He's not, and this interview is not helping that.
Do you think he gets traded on draft weekend?
I don't think he gets traded. I think he gets cut.
No way.
So you just laid it out, right? The only market for him,
because if they cut him, they owe him the $18 million, right?
But the only market for him is Seattle, right? And Seattle doesn't want to take on that contract. And if the only market is Seattle, why would they? Because you don't have to. You're not in a bidding war. Nobody else is coming for him. So you just sit there and wait until they cut him because they have to because of this, right?
Yeah.
And okay, once you cut him, it probably gets more of a market because a couple other teams are going to come in once it's not an $18 million deal. But like, my point being, Seattle are not going to jump into this for $18 million. Like, they're going to wait until it's cheaper and hope they can get him on an open market versus other teams that are giving him a backup job because they're still going to be offering him starting gig. I don't see nobody's coming in with a trade.
Lions got $18 million cap space. I'm just saying. True. I'm just saying.
And again, though, it
Jared
feels
Goff
like
and Baker Mayfield on the same team.
Again, though, like it feels like somebody needs to be saving him from himself. Like
he's mad right now.
Right.
And I get it. I think that both of us understand
there's got to be an advisor somewhere that's like, dude, do not sit down and talk about this in front of a camera.
Yeah,
it gets don't worse. Do it. You're not helping. Like, sit down. I know it sucks, but you have to sit quietly in the corner and not say a damn thing because anytime you open your mouth, it'll make it worse from now on. Like, just quiet. Don't say anything.
Yeah. I
know you got screwed. Everybody else knows it.
Yeah.
Just don't talk about it.
I agree. He's in a tough spot, man. Look, I would feel all sorts of emotions as well.
Yeah.
I really would. And it'd be hard for me not to want to say something because, Baker, for the whole time that he was in Cleveland, too, there was probably plenty. I mean, Cleveland's a huge market when it comes to covering football. Like, there's probably plenty of things that happened or didn't happen or whatever that got reported where Baker's probably been silent on a lot more things than we realize.
I know,
as well,
but it's the ones that he isn't.
No, I know, and it is those couple that he isn't on that we point the finger to. But the numbers of things that he has probably shut his mouth on are the competition because of all of that.
Somebody, either him or somebody around him, like, needs to recognize that difference. It's like when you're winning and when things are going well,
it's a fine line.
You can be you.
It's a fine line.
But when things are going badly, you need to pull it back and you need to shut up because right now we need somebody to come in and like give you a job because you don't have one at the moment. I mean, you do technically.
He's getting $18 million.
Right.
I mean, he's getting $18 million. No matter what.
You're still on the.
That's probably what he is thinking.
I know.
He's probably thinking, I'm getting paid $18 million this year, no matter what.
Yeah.
So if I talk enough, and Cleveland has to swallow their pride enough to cut me from the team, maybe that's his end goal. Maybe that's just all he wants.
I don't think anything he's doing right now is endearing him to the next team, and that's his problem.
I don't think it's helping, but I'm going to be honest. And we can move on if we want to, but like I'm going to be honest, I don't know how much it's hurting him because what is he doing that people don't already think of Baker Mayfield right now, right?
So you're reinforcing it, right?
But for him to get traded is one thing, but when he gets cut, if a team's interested in him, they're still going to be interested in him. They're just going to have him for a different deal. So honestly, like what he's doing, I don't think helps him. But I really don't think it makes things worse. Maybe, like you said, like reinforcing it, but reinforcing what? Something we already know. So in my mind, I'm thinking in my head, maybe he's talking and making things worse for Cleveland to trade him. But if Cleveland cuts him, the same teams that would have been interested in maybe trading for him are still going to be interested in signing him for a lower contract.
Maybe. I think recency bias is kind of important, though. Like teams, everybody often goes with like, what's the last thing we saw? And if the last thing you saw is Baker Mayfield kind of whinging on a podcast, you're like,
it doesn't help.
You really want to give this guy the starting job?
Yeah, it doesn't help.
Anyway, right now you can get 50% off a PFF Elite annual subscription if you use the promo code DRAFT50. That's as cheap as you're going to find this. 50% off PFF Elite is as cheap as it's ever going to get. 365 days of Elite access. You get all of PFF's locked article content. You get a draft guide, 250 plus pages or 250 3-page scouting profiles. And if you're doing it now, you're going to get 2 draft guides, right? You're going to get this one. You're going to get next year's draft guide as well. 2 for the price of 1. Completely unlocked mock draft simulator. Data and grades for the 2021 season, next season, all the previous seasons that have been archived as well. Promo code DRAFT50. 50% off a PFF Elite annual subscription. Also, PFF has launched Hutch, a 4-part podcast series with #1 overall prospect Aidan Hutchinson, out this Wednesday, so yesterday. Show includes interviews with Jim Harbaugh, current former Michigan football players, key members of Aidan's family, media members, and draft analysts. Check out Hutch. You were interviewed, right? You were part of that?
I was. I did not make the final cut, but I was interviewed for
Left
it.
on the cutting room floor.
I just got to be better. I just got to be better next time.
But you did listen to it.
I did. I listened to all 4 episodes. It really is. It is like a long form feature article in audio form, and with it being audio form, there's more emotion, there's more personality with it. And Austin hosts it, and he talks with Aidan and Aidan's parents and Aidan's coaches. Harbaugh, his offense coordinator as well. Like, there's so many different perspectives on all this, and they go through so many different things he's been through. They also go through some of the biggest moments that Aidan had, like when he was straight up just like pointing and calling out the offensive lineman at Ohio State during the OSU game. Like, Aidan laughs about it, and he tells you exactly what he said to the guy and all that kinds of stuff. So it's awesome. It's a really cool podcast.
And it's on the YouTube channel as well in visual form. The guys have done a great job. The video guys on the behind the scenes here making it look awesome as well. So check it out wherever you get your podcasts, or indeed the YouTube channel. So let's get into the draft. We're going to talk Trayvon Walker at some point. We've talked a lot about Trayvon Walker already. I want to get your take, and I'll kind of shut up largely because I've already given mine plenty. But first, I want to get into some over and underrated players a little bit.
Okay.
Let's talk most. Which way will we do it?
So are you going to give me a name, and I'm going to tell you if they're overrated, underrated?
No, I'm just saying, which will we go negative first or positive?
Let's go positive first.
Okay.
Well, yeah, let's go positive. Come on.
I was going to save the uplifting bit for the end, but
can we do a sandwich? How many do you have?
I don't know. Let's just see where we go.
All right, let's start positive, then get into a little bit of negative, and then end with at least one positive.
So most underrated players in the draft. Who jumps out to you?
Underrated player in the draft, I would say that Drake Jackson for me right now, the edge rusher out of USC, is probably the most underrated. He's really good. I don't really know how else to explain it. Like, if you go watch the USC tape, yeah, the stats don't super jump out at you. I thought that this year was going to be a big leap in production from him. It wasn't. It's kind of more of the same. But when I say more of the same, I mean it was, okay, he plays well, he just doesn't get home, quite get home. And then there are a couple of times, whether it's on 2nd and long or 3rd down or whatever, when he pins his ears back and he gets to attack the outside shoulder with speed, and what he brings more than a lot of other prospects in this class, bend and flexibility, man. This dude can dip under the arms, he can get around offensive tackles, and he has those abilities that you cannot teach. And so I think USC had him listed at, because originally, I think when I started watching him, a year or two ago, he was like 240, 245. So he was a lighter stand-up outside linebacker kind of a guy who was more of a speed profile dude. And I was like, okay, I kind of like this dude. I really do. This past year, I think he played at 250-ish. Shows up at the combine, he was like 257. I was like, okay, gaining weight, we're getting stronger. And he still tested really well, I think explosively at the combine. He did the vert, the broad, and all that. Then he showed up at USC's Pro Day, like a month and a half later. He was like 270. Like, he was huge. He was like 15 pounds heavier. And I'm like, what are we doing now? Because a lot of your tape is at like 245, and now you're 270. That's a completely different player. But then he continued to test really well with agility at that kind of a weight. And so when I combine how he was able to test at a heavier weight, both at the combine and at the pro day, and I look at how much bend, flexibility, burst, all that kinds of stuff he was able to show, I think he's the most underrated. He is not even mentioned as a first-round prospect, and I think that's completely disrespectful. Clearly, he's going to go in day 2, so I'm not even going to fight that battle. But I would genuinely consider this guy at the back half of the first round because I think he's that good.
It's an interesting group of edge rushers because you have the kind of top-tier guys, the Aidan Hutchinsons, Kayvon Thibodeau. Both those guys have been talked about as clear number 1 picks since the start of this process, right? It was Thibodeau, now it's Aidan Hutchinson. And then you've got the Trayvon Walker thing, which we'll get to in a bit, forcing himself into that discussion. George Karlaftis seems to be the kind of forgotten guy that's just getting lost in the middle somewhere while you focus on everybody else.
Right.
And then you almost have the next group of guys. And that's where it seems to get chaotic, where there's half a dozen more edge rushers once you get clear of those guys. And now it's chaos because everybody has their favorites and players that they like, players that they don't like, and that group seems to be in any order whatsoever.
It is a decently deep edge rush group, and we don't often get that. Normally, you tell yourself, hey, you better draft the premium positions early. You better pass rusher, pass protector, and then island corners, like guys who can play man coverage. You got to draft those guys early. You're not going to have a chance to get the ones that are worthwhile at the top of the second round. This year's a little bit different with edge rusher. Now, it could end up being that a big run happens at the back end of the first just because it is pass rusher, and teams obviously love that position for good reason. But I don't know if there's enough picks to be had in the first round where you're not going to have a chance to get a really good guy at the top of the second round in this class. Like when I look at, for example, if I'm formulating a draft plan for the New York Giants, they can go a lot of different directions. They need an edge rusher, they need an offensive tackle, and they need a corner. Okay, those are 3 of the 4 premium positions in the game of football outside of quarterback, right? And some people would argue they need a quarterback, but they just don't seem to be picking one. So they have all 3 of those on the table. They've got pick 5, they've got pick 7, and they've got an early pick in the second round. And when I go through mock drafts, some Giants fans say, well, you got to attack trenches. You got to have a pass rusher at the front. And the more that I run simulations, the more I like pick Evan Neal at 5, pick Derek Stingley or Sauce Garner at 7, and then pick Boye Mafe, Arnold Ebiketie, or Drake Jackson at the top of the second, whoever's left there.
Right.
That is a hell of a haul to me if you get that.
Yeah.
Now, if you go the other way around, if you go, okay, we'll go Jermaine Johnson at 5, we'll go Charles Cross at 7, and then Kyler Gordon maybe at the top of the second round. Like, that's okay, but I'd still rather take the first scenario.
Yeah, I mean, to me, the edge rusher thing with one of those top 2 picks only makes sense if you love, a Thibodeau, right? If you thought that he was the number 1 prospect in the draft and suddenly he's there at 5 or 7, you take him just for value, right? Yeah, there might not be as big a gap between him and those top of the second round edge rushers as other positions. But if you're the Giants and you think that guy's like the number 1 prospect in the entire draft, that sort of changes the dynamic a bit, right? If they're different to the consensus board on that, I think I would be okay with taking him. But I agree with your general premise that, like, in a vacuum and relative to sort of where the positions are and what's going to be there at the top of the second, it makes way more sense to not take the edge rusher with one of those top 2 picks. Along the lines of the Drake Jackson thing, Nick Bonito, to me, feels like he's massively underrated at this point.
You like Nick?
Yeah, like I understand he's one of those guys where you can kind of see why people are lower on him. The size isn't what you want it to be. He's an undersized edge player. He's not going to do a ton against the run. But it feels like we're sleeping on just how good a pass rusher he is and has been. Like, he is insanely athletic. He has the best sort of 2-year production in terms of pass rush of anybody. Any of these prospects, including Aidan Hutchinson, including Thibodeau. Nick Bonito has been the most productive pass rusher in this class, and then showed up and was, crazy athletic, ran a 4.5, 35 vertical, good measurables across the board. It feels like we should be focusing a little bit more on that and giving the guy some credit, even if he's only a situational pass rusher at the next level. Like, it's a really good one trick to have.
Yeah, and I think that's how you have to look at Nick Bonito, because Oklahoma plays him it's just very specific. Like, This is what you're doing. It's the same thing with Perrion Winfrey. There is a specific role that you are playing. And Perrion Winfrey is kind of that guy where you watch him on tape, and if you watch him from an overall interior defensive lineman lens, if you will, you're going to see a lack of strength or a lack of ability to hold up against the run, what a lot of interior defensive linemen are asked to do with Perrion Winfrey, and you're going to say, okay, he's great for you on third down, but can you even play him on first and second down? Because he's getting blown off the ball a little bit. But it's those flashes where Oklahoma tries to put a heavier guy next to him, make sure that he doesn't have to take on too much, no more than one guy, really not getting double teams a lot. And then when third down comes around, you let him pin his ears back, you let him go to work. And you see that. And I think with Nick Bonito, it's the same thing. Nick Bonito, I watch him, and it's just like, okay, he's in the 7th percentile for edge players. And when it comes to weight, I mean, it's just like he is extremely small. He's 248. And if you add more weight to him, like if you get Nick Bonito up to 260, 265, you're taking away why you're probably drafting him. So you've got to be okay with playing him around 250. Maybe you get him up to 255, but I think that's probably like a multi-year journey anyways, because you don't want to throw too much weight on him and all that kinds of stuff. So I like Nick Bonito, but I like him firmly as like a mid day 2, round 3 kind of a player. You draft him for a specific purpose. You have a package that you would love to get him in on, and the rest of the time he could be a rotational guy, play special teams.
But I think we also need to start rethinking the way we frame some of that, right? Because it's like, yeah, he's great on third downs, but can even play him on first and second downs. But if we think about today's NFL, like it's flipped, right? Like people aren't playing base defense almost ever.
Sure.
It's like 25% of your snaps. So, and if you look at, last year, if you look at some of the best pass rushing grades in the NFL, let me read you some players' run defense grades for edge rushers. You've got Trey Hendrickson, had 87 pressures, including the postseason, 20 sacks, including the postseason, pass rushing grade of 87, run defense grade 41, right? Randy Gregory, really great pass rusher for Dallas last season, run defense grade 47. Charles Omenihu had a really decent pass rushing season. Run defense grade 44. Jerry Hughes, 55 run defense grade. Chandler Jones, run defense grade of 40. You got a lot of really, really good edge rushers who just are not defending the run anymore, right? Because you don't need to. Because most of the NFL is a passing offense. It's a passing league. Third downs have become second and third down, first down a lot of the time. It's like, it's no longer obvious passing situations. It's like, let's default to the pass unless it's an obvious run situation or a team.
Well, that's what we're seeing the Chargers do, right?
Or a team that just likes running the ball on like those, the team runs the ball on 2nd and 10. Everyone's like, you idiots. You know what I mean? Like it's become so nobody cares if you're not defending the run on those plays. So when you have a guy like Nick Bonito, who's incredibly good in pass rushing situations, isn't going to do much from a run defense point of view, I would simply ask, are we magnifying that part of his game too much and underrating the part where he's really good?
You definitely need to have context to it in terms of where the NFL is going. A little bit smaller, a little bit faster, but the game is still about obviously dominating the person in front of you. And where I agree with you, we're changing things a little bit, and I think that we're seeing things evolve at the pro level a lot. You look at the Chargers, and the Chargers were in trouble last year because they did that too much. Now, if they have more of an anchor in the middle, like if they happen to be gifted to Jordan Davis, we'll see what happens this year and how much that's able to impact what they do. But you've still got to be physical and dominate up front, I think, on those early downs. That's not completely going away. And I do agree that you've got to be able to look at what matters most, pass rushing. And even if a guy is just a pass rusher, he can certainly have a role on your team. It's just kind of got to be to a specific team, right? You can't look at, like, if you're running a mock draft simulator on PFF.com, which you all should do, if you see a team with an edge need, even if they are like a 3-4 outside linebacker team that can deal with a smaller edge rush guy, Nick Bonito might not 100% fill that. Like, you might not want Nick Bonito to fill that in the second round. You would probably want to be a team that doesn't have as high of an edge rush need, where Nick Bonito can truly be that come in special package player and give you that upside. Not only is he like fresh, he's playing less snaps, he's ready, he's energized, he's ready to go. He's doing exactly what he's good at. You are putting his strength on the field at one time. And I think that's important, especially for parts of the game that matter the most. But you've got to draft it appropriately. Like, you don't want to be drafting that guy, I don't think, as a top 50 selection or something like a top 75 selection. Maybe it depends on if your team is really built well enough. Like, I think of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, right? You look at most of this team and you go, okay, they have starters at every single level. Tampa could probably in the second round afford to go, we are going to draft a situational specialist that's going to help our football team in the second round. And they can do that because the roster's already set up like that. Not every team can do that, but maybe a couple can.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's also there's teams out there that just need pressure, right? There's teams out there that simply, the players that they have, nobody is capable of rushing the passer. Like, they're just not able to get to affect the quarterback. So whether or not he's going to help in the run game, a guy like Bonito might be worth bringing in simply because he's going to guarantee you a certain degree of pressure. And then the other point I think is worth making is that you probably can't carry many players like that, right? But so Randy Gregory,
only a handful,
right?
For
like
sure.
Randy Gregory with Dallas, bad grade against the run, wasn't affecting the run. On the other hand, DeMarcus Lawrence on the other side had a run defense grade of 93. So you're offsetting a lot of what you lose with Randy Gregory not defending the run, with the other guy absolutely crushing it. And like, I think that for the Chargers, bringing in a guy like Khalil Mack, one of the best run defending edge rushers in the NFL since he came into the league, he will make a material difference to that run defense, whether or not they find an interior presence like Jordan Davis or whether Sebastian Joseph Day upgrades there. So if you have one of those guys, I think it increases your ability to carry a guy who isn't playing the run particularly well. And there's also, like, you know, Nick Bonito, if he never learns to defend the run, will never be one of the best edge rusher or edge defenders in the NFL, because those guys can do both, right? Myles Garrett, TJ Watt, Max Crosby, Joey Bosa, Nick Bosa, like, all those guys defend the run well. Von Miller still. So if you're never going to do that, you're never going to be in that group. But you can be the Randy Gregory's of the world, who just got himself, you know, a big contract for Denver because of his pass rushing, not because he defends the run particularly well. I think because of that sort of framing, right? Well, he can only play on third down. I think we're sort of forgetting that third down now is like 2/3 of the game. Not technically, but you know what I mean?
You can have that package in early. But I also think that, you know, you mentioned, like, if a team doesn't have any pass rush at all, they could draft a guy like Benito and he'll get you pass rush. I'd push back on that a little bit. I think you need players around him in order to get that. So again, like, I think Benito is a specific case where if you have players already in place around the roster, whether they're stout run defenders and they're going to take up a bunch of blocks and give you single cover or single assignments on the outside, or just if you have a good D-line in general, then picking him gives you even more value because you only have to put him in situations where he's going to thrive. I don't think he's like this one-on-one machine where, I can't remember if you brought up the Falcons or if I'm just thinking of the Falcons when you say a team that, like, has no pass rush. Like, if you put Nick Bonito on the Falcons, I think he's completely silent. I don't think he does anything because there's nothing around him. But if you put him on a team, like if you were to put him on the Chargers, he plays really well. I think he gets you maybe, I don't know, anywhere from like 4 to 6 sacks in a season. And all of a sudden, like, those plays become huge. Not to mention all the pressures that he would get that aren't recorded. So that's kind of the way that I look at Nick Bonito.
Okay. Now let's go. Who's overrated?
I think Trevor Penning's a little overrated at this point.
Really?
And a lot of people really like him, and
a lot of the offensive line people.
Yeah, and I get it. I just feel like Trevor Penning has such a long way to go. Like, if we were drafting Trevor Penning in like early day 2, I'd love it. I'd love him as a player because you look at what he did at Northern Iowa, and you got to remember that their season was completely flipped. So because of COVID. So he had a fall season, he had a spring season, and then he had a fall season again, and like that was his final year. So he played 3 seasons of football within about a year and a half.
Right.
Started every single game. Didn't miss a single game. So I know that people love the toughness. They love the availability. He's clearly a great athlete at the position. Yeah. And obviously he's got the tape where he's just, burying you like The Undertaker in a WWE match, right? So I think that those are all the things you absolutely love. I watched him at the Senior Bowl, and I watched that outside shoulder just get cooked time and time again against some good edge rushers that were at the Senior Bowl. I don't want to make it seem like they were scrubs or anything, but all of that is just saying, like, I think he needs a little bit of time. I think he needs a little bit of work. And so that's I think that people are kind of saying, hey, let's take him top 20, top 15. I've seen some mocks with him going in the top 10. It's like, okay, if you're drafting a guy like that, you're probably starting him right away. And if he starts right away, it might be a little tough for you in year 1.
Are you factoring in the Duke Manyweather bump? He's been training with Duke.
Duke is awesome. Duke is absolutely one of the best in the business, no question about it. And so, I mean, if you're training with Duke, you're getting the right teaching in front of you. You are kind of what I'm saying. Like, if I see that you're getting attacked one way or the other on film, he's gonna fix it for you. So I like the fact that he's working with Duke. I really do. But I don't know. I feel like people talk about Penning as if he's further along than he is. That's the part that scares me. Not the potential, just the part that people are saying, hey, let's draft him super high. You're probably going to have to throw him out there early at that point, and maybe he's not so ready for it. And I don't want him to get ruined before we get to see him shine.
I know Mike Renner is lower on him than a lot of people as well. I mean, he's going to have him much lower. I think the final big board might come out today, tomorrow, whenever it is, and he has Penning a lot lower than other people do. I also as soon as we saw those Senior Bowl plays come out, it's like him tossing dudes to the ground and just generally starting a fight every single rep.
Yeah.
You're like, immediately he's going to get overdrafted. Just from that. NFL people love that, right? The nastiness, the finish, all those crappy terms they use to describe things that don't really matter.
Right.
They love that stuff. So
Well,
as soon as you see that,
I don't say it doesn't matter. I mean, like, that stuff matters.
I think it doesn't matter.
When you play on the offensive line, it is every single snap is a dude trying to move you against your will and you trying to move him against your will.
Okay, but like
at that point, attitude matters, I think.
For every nasty, that's the term, right? Going back decades, the buzzword that people talk about on the offensive line is nasty.
Mm-hmm.
But one of the best offensive linemen in the NFL, Rashawn Slater, comes in, one of the nicest dudes in the world. Never, like, that dude doesn't play nasty.
But
He
I
plays
still
well.
think. But I still think.
Joe
that
Thomas.
But
Joe Thomas is like the least nasty offensive lineman that's ever existed. That dude was just always in your way.
No, see, I think I look at it differently. When I think of nasty, I don't necessarily think of like, okay, he's drawing penalties
But
or
he
something.
didn't play nasty.
But I think
he just always was between you and the quarterback.
I think that like that mentality still existed with him though. Like I think that he would have done what clearly he wasn't taking it too far because Joe Thomas was incredibly clean as a prospect as well, or as a player as well, because he was so technically savvy. But like, I don't know, man. I wouldn't get it twisted. When the guy's coming at Joe Thomas, it's not like Joe Thomas doesn't have that nasty in him. I think he does.
There are definitely offensive linemen.
There are just people who wear it on their sleeve a little bit more.
Yeah, but that's the thing, right? So Lane Johnson, I think, plays nastier, right? That guy has an edge to his play.
Mm-hmm.
He's a little bit chippier. He's a little bit like in your face and, playing to the whistle and maybe a beat beyond, right? Joe Thomas didn't. They never did. The dude just played like that guy was the most sort of straight lace tie, done up to the top collar. I will just play to the whistle, and as soon as that whistle does, I'll march back to the huddle with my briefcase, having just done my job.
He was a James Bond of offensive tackles.
And he's like the best offensive tackle that's played in the last 20 years.
I don't know.
I think you can look throughout the league for every one of these guys that's nasty. And like there's dozens of people that are not that.
Who was PFF's highest graded player this year?
Trent Wood, definitely nasty.
Definitely nasty. All I'm saying is when you look at a lot of the great offensive line. Look, I've never played offensive line. Clearly. So I'm not going to pretend.
You say clearly, but Austin Gale was busy telling us about his high school
But
career.
Austin, have you ever seen Austin like actually get into a pass set and try to do it now?
No.
When we were in Vegas
for
Vegas for the East West Shrine,
yeah.
I think he called out Tresh. He was just like, we were just like bored and we were kind of like waiting for something to happen or whatever. We were in between things. He's like, Tresh, give me a pass rush rep right now. And Austin like put up the hands and like fired and like shifted, and he just like boom, just like got into like the dude is so intense.
Yeah,
at
he's
everything
like
he does
beyond the moon.
Well, correct, but like that's why he's a good offensive lineman. Anyways, I digress. A lot of the great offensive linemen that we talk about, not just in the league, but who have played, you're going to talk about them being big. You're going to talk about them being athletic. But I guarantee you're also going to hear in a lot of these guys, people who talk about them, describe them, who went up against them, they're going to be like, nasty.
Yeah, but
nasty,
I think a lot of that is just because that's a cliche that's been used for the last like 30 years.
I don't know.
I don't think if you're looking at these guys, you're like, I need a nasty guy. I just need a good offensive lineman. I don't care if he's nasty. If he's Joe Thomas, I'm happy. In fact, not only I'm over the moon. If he's Joe Thomas, he's the best tackle we've seen in the last 20 years. I'm good with that. I don't need him to be tossing the defensive end at the floor every rep the way Trevor Penning does.
Do you believe in momentum? Do you believe momentum is real? Because go ahead.
So this is the thing that gets analytics people into trouble.
Of
right?
course it does.
Like,
of course it does.
I believe that
I'm okay with what I believe. So I want to hear what you say.
I believe that people feel momentum internally. I don't believe that it has any effect on anything. But I believe that psychologically, when shit goes one way or the other, you think it. But I don't believe that I believe that the data. I believe the data is correct in showing that doesn't actually affect anything.
I believe that momentum is real in the form of psychology, right? I think that it is a mental state that happens within people. To bring it back to this conversation, I also believe that being physically imposing and standing next to somebody and striking fear in them gets the worst ability out of them. And so that's why I think that nasty matters.
So you buy into the body blows stuff?
I do buy into the body blows thing. Wow. Yes.
I don't
know how I work here.
Yeah, I know. It's wild, right? I think that just generally from the NFL, I think at that level, that stuff just doesn't matter anymore. It's kind of like, the way running...
Context is key for everything.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. I'm not
the way
there.
the
I'm
lower
not
down
there.
the level of football you go, the more important running backs are? So, like, at the college level, we've proven running the ball matters
And
way
high
more
school,
than
obviously,
NFL.
if you have a great running back, you just hand it to him. And
so the
they
lower
win
down the level you go, the more important running the ball is as a concept. I suspect that stuff is also true, right? The lower down you go, the more important the psychology of, like, the get off the bus thing, right? Like, when you're in high school and you see, like, a 6'7", 350-pound dude step off the bus first, you're like, oh, we're boned. Like, forget it. Go home. There's no point in even going out here. Like, we're done. College, it's like, oh, crap. And then in the NFL, you see Phil Loadhole get off the bus. You're like, whatever. He's just another dude.
You're right. It matters less, but I think also the ability and the bar for the talent that's in the league, like, has something to do with that. No doubt about it.
Right?
But like Aidan Hutchinson himself in the podcast series, he talks about the game against Iowa. I think he was saying it was his sophomore year, maybe it was freshman year, and Tristan Wirfs is there, and he said that he went out on warm-ups and he was like, it's the biggest human I've ever seen. He's like, it's as if they like took one of those like bike pumps and just like stuck it into his leg and just like pumped up his body, and it's just overinflated. And he talked about, like, obviously he still went out and played. You still have a job to do. It's not like you be like, coach, I'm out. Like, I'm not playing this game. But it still was something that he thought about and remembered.
But
and
the
that
point
goes
is,
into it.
what effect does it have? And for a guy like Hutchinson, if anything, it probably is like, I need to up my game to play this dude.
For some.
And certainly at the NFL level, I think you see a guy like that, you're like, oh, I'm going to have to bring it today. Otherwise, I'm getting destroyed. So I just think that, like I said, as soon as I saw all the Senior Bowl stuff with Trevor Penning, I was like, oh, that dude's going 10 picks higher than he should in the first round.
He might.
Because of that. And it's like,
he has other things other than that.
of course,
but
yeah,
you are
that
right. It hypes
own,
it. It hypes
I'm like,
it up.
that on its own is going to get him 10 picks overdrafted.
There's always a Hollywood aspect to every draft. There's players in every single draft who have one or two plays maybe, or something that happens where somebody remembers that.
Right.
And they go, that's going to sway my vote.
Perfect. Not even a transition. Just along the same lines, right? The dude that gets off the bus first thing, Jordan Davis is surely overrated at this point.
What's overrated?
What's overrated?
No. I meant like what selection? Like what is overrated?
If he goes in the first half of the first round, we've lost the run of ourselves.
I think it's possible.
I think it's entirely possible.
Yeah.
Which is what I think makes him vastly overrated at this point. Like, what about his tape suggests that he belongs in the top half of the first round?
Dude, he no one can block the man.
Right, for 300 snaps.
What do you mean? No, see, I don't fully agree with that. That is something that obviously happened at Georgia. But we brought up earlier in the podcast, we talked about, or maybe we did, maybe it was beforehand, Trayvon Walker and his alignment, his job, and like his singular job at Georgia. And so we didn't get to see a lot of what his full potential was because of the defense that they ran at Georgia. Right. I think the case is I think it's the same with Jordan Davis. Now, you want to talk about the Alabama game, right, where they couldn't get him off the field and he was gassed and he became a liability to them. Jordan Davis, I think, was playing at like 355 in that.
Okay.
He's like 340, 335 now. That's what he wants to play at. That's a massive difference for him.
Okay, hang on.
I think that's a huge difference because that is 20 less pounds on him.
Yeah, but he's like 6'7", and he's already 350.
I mean, the dude's not running a marathon out here. But what he does...
That's huge to you or me.
Hold on. You were arguing for Nick Bonito.
Yeah.
Being a specific player earlier and needing more love. Now you're trying to bring Jordan Davis now.
Well, okay, hang on. First of all, the difference between 355 and 341 when you're 355 is like a rounding error, right? Steve, who's only quote unquote like 270, right? Steve's margin of error when he gets on the scales in the morning is like 10 pounds, right? For you or me, 15 pounds
it's a lot.
Like,
it's a lot.
It's like your leg, right? if you're out by 20 pounds, it's like I've been ill for 6 weeks, right? I had dysentery or something and I haven't been able to get off the toilet
That's a good
for the last week.
Right there.
Right? For Jordan Davis, it's like I skipped dinner.
Yeah,
it's not the same.
No, I think it. Oh, look, it was a good joke. It was good. I enjoyed it. I laughed. But I do think Jordan Davis should get picked somewhere within 10 to 20. I really do. So I think that's where he should get picked.
My point being,
he is not just big.
No,
he is
agreed.
uniquely athletically gifted, and for him to have. I think, what was his recruiting profile? I'm going to look this up real quick.
But
Just say your point. I'm going to look this up.
My point being, he played 300 snaps and a year at Georgia, and there's evidence of him being gassed in those 300 snaps. Not just in that Alabama game where they kept him on the field and made him play like an exorbitant amount of snaps relative to what he normally plays. But there's games where he's playing like 30 snaps and you can see him look wrecked, gassed at times in those 30 snaps. I don't think that's the difference between 355 and 340. I just don't. I don't think that shaving those 15 pounds off is going to go from like, oh, he can't play 25 snaps to suddenly he can play 50 in a game and he's good.
I'm not going to pretend I'm, John Brink is sports science out here and know exactly what the numbers get down
That's
to.
What the show's all about.
And how much. That's true. But so if I talk to people that said Davis is never going to give you more than that many snaps,
right,
then okay, like that goes in the evaluation. I genuinely think that what he played at Georgia and the weight that he played at is going to be different than how he's using the pros. So I see him with a little bit more upside.
So what do you think the usage difference is? Because that's the other area where I disagree with your idea that the story is the same for him and Trayvon Walker. Because I think the usage, the way Georgia used Trayvon Walker absolutely did not help him look good.
Right.
I think it actually put him in a situation where it's like, this is better for our defense. It's not better for Trayvon Walker. Whereas I think the way they used the way the defense plays actually played exactly to the strengths of Jordan Davis.
It does, but I think that there's more in the tank there for him. I mean, you saw from the athletic ability that we saw at the Combine and the Pro Day and everything, like, I don't think this is a player you only play on first and second down. Now, is he going to be Warren Sapp? No. I don't think he's going to be like Warren Sapp on third downs or anything, but I think that this is a full 3-down player. He's an interior defensive lineman. He's a bigger guy, so you're going to have a rotation for him anyways, as you would most interior defensive linemen. But I don't think this is this massive liability on passing downs. I think it's going to be different in the NFL, and I still think that he is going to give you uniquely dominant reps on the first 2 downs, on first and second down, and things like that. I think that the way that he imposes the line of scrimmage with just his length, his sheer size, his strength, opens so much up for the rest of the team. So I think that his impact in the middle makes quite literally everyone else in the front seven around him better. Yeah. That's why I think that there's value there. And because I don't think you're going to have to take that off the field as much as you are worried about. That he was at Georgia.
Yeah, so I have a couple of concerns. The first one is that we are 100% projecting whether or not he can play a bigger role in terms of workload, right?
We're doing the same with Walker.
Sure. So. Well, at least we know Walker can play a lot of snaps, relative to Jordan Davis, right? So, but we're 100% projecting. The first point is like, can he play more than 350 snaps in a season? Because if he can't, like, this is a total waste of a first-round draft pick. So number one, let's hope we scale it up to 600 and he's still the same guy. Number two is, as much as we talk about this guy being like singularly unique and dominant in the run game and that length and the reps, like his highlight reel against the run is insane. It's nuts.
Yeah.
It's him like literally bench pressing two different people, tossing them aside. Like nobody can do that.
Correct.
He didn't do it as much as he needed to, though. Like when you look at his run defense grade and the consistency of that, like he's not been as good against the run as even other one-dimensional, giant run-stuffing defensive tackles that have gone in the first round in the last few years, right? He doesn't have the run defense PFF grade of a Vita Vea or a Dexter Lawrence or those guys. Mm-hmm. So now we're relying on, okay, we got to project that he'll play twice the number of snaps, and we got to project that we can improve the consistency and how often he's making these insane plays. That's all of a sudden, now we're talking about quite a lot of projection.
He's not Vita Vea. I think the people who try to make him anything like Vita Vea didn't watch Vita Vea at Washington. Don't watch Vita Vea.
And that's before we get to now we got to project him as a pass rusher as well.
But here's also the thing about Vita Vea. It took Vita almost 2 full seasons to just get his body right to play right in the NFL to what we see now. Mm-hmm. Because what he was early on was truly just like this run stuffer.
Right.
But then 2 years into the league, now all of a sudden he becomes this incredible player that you can really use to get the most out of everybody else. And I don't want to say that's what they hope to get out of Davis, because I think Vita Vea is a better pass rusher than Davis is always going to be.
Yeah.
But again, I think for certain teams, a unique player like Jordan Davis is worth a first-round pick. We're sitting there with the Chargers at 17. If he makes it to the Chargers at 17, pick him. 100%. I think he makes a total difference for that team. You mentioned that that the NFL and defenses are trying to go lighter. They're trying to go less base. They're trying to go more into nickel. They're trying to get more speed on the field. You do that when you draft Davis. And it's going to have to be more than Davis, but that's what it is for everybody. That's always what it is. So when you get him on the field and it's him and it's Khalil Mack and it's Joey Bosa and then it's the speed of the linebackers and the secondary behind him, all of a sudden you're playing the exact defense that you want. Now, the Chargers were in 3rd and 3, 3rd and 2 so much. If you even change the math of that a little bit, you get to more 3rd and 5s, 3rd and 6s because you pick Jordan Davis. How many more games are the Chargers going to win just because their offense is that good?
Yeah, I mean, they went too far.
To me, is worth a first-round pick when you have that kind of a player that makes that kind of an impact.
They went too far in the, let's sacrifice the run in favor of everything else thing.
Right.
That, I think, is the right strategy. But once you get to the point, like when Cleveland, in Cleveland, like running 7 yards per carry against them, like, okay, at that point, it's too much.
Right.
Because the 7 yards per carry, you've got 4 downs to work with.
Right.
You're not stopping them at that stage.
Right.
So I agree the Chargers went too far, and a guy like Jordan Davis could absolutely make a big difference for that team. But when we're talking about like the first half of the first round, when you just lay out all the projection that you need to do in all those different areas, like we need to project workload, we need to project increased consistency against the run, we need to project pass rush.
I think
all of a sudden that's just so much to be expecting to all go your way.
I think a lot of things also go into it, like you're weighing him versus the rest of the class, like what the current class is. You also want to weigh the fact that every team's going to have different boards. So there are some teams that might value Jordan Davis really high. There might be some that don't, based on how they play. And then something else I'll throw out there. We're talking about Jordan Davis here. We're talking about Jordan Davis potentially going top 15. And then we're talking about Travis Jones going like early second round.
Yes.
Travis Jones is also really freaking good.
Yes.
So like I think that also Travis Jones gives you that ability.
Better run defense grades, by the way.
Right. And I think that Travis Jones is, we're talking about overrated, underrated. I think that Travis Jones is certainly an underrated player right now because I think that he brings a lot to the defense. There's a lot of times where I'll do a mock draft and I'll put Travis Jones at the back end of the first round and some people are like, nah, I don't want like an interior, I don't want like a run stuffing dude there. And I'm like,
right.
God, look at the rest of your team, though. Look at how he helps the rest of your team, things that make it better. And I think that that's the same arguments to Jordan Davis. The most important part for me is how much he plays for you.
Yeah.
You are completely right there. I would have to, if I was a GM, I would have to talk to a lot of people. Strength and conditioning coach, the nutrition people. I'd want to talk to, obviously, the defensive line coach and the trainer at Georgia. What did you have him do? What was his role? Did you push him this far? What was he like in conditioning? And if I can confirm to myself that, okay, maybe him losing 20, 25 pounds, still being as dominant in the run as he is, but maybe being out there a little bit more, having more of an effect on our team, that all of a sudden, to me, becomes more worth it because you're up in the snap count. Yeah. But it's no doubt it's something you got to think about.
Because that's the last point that's definitely worth making, right? Like even if what you said is true, and I have my reservations, right? That losing 15 pounds sort of transforms his durability in his gas tank. Like, the fact that he was playing 15, 20, 30, however many he got up to, he was playing at like 380 at one point, right? The fact that he was playing at those weights ever is a bit of a red flag. Like, if that's going to be an issue, then everything we just talked about is kind of up in the air.
He said I think he said at the Combine that he played at like 355, 360.
I think he'd said that he'd been last season at Georgia. He'd been playing at 355, 360. But I think he'd said that he'd arrived at Georgia at 380.
I don't know why he would lie about that, but he looks even bigger.
Oh, sure. But like, the point is, like, if we're agreeing now that like where he wants to be is 335, 340, and we're throwing out numbers that are 35, 40 pounds ahead of that when he's been on the field in, like, not a professional setting, but a de facto professional setting. Like the University of Georgia football program is effectively a professional enterprise here. So if we've been playing up to 35 pounds over where we should have been, why is that immediately going to change once we're getting a paycheck for it?
You don't want to make a living out of picking outliers.
Right.
You do not. But for certain teams, it could be worth it. And I think that Jordan Davis is a uniquely gifted football player in a lot of ways. And so for some teams, I would tell you that he would be worth a first-round pick somewhere between that range.
Agreed. The only true guaranteed quality pickup this season, though, is Manscaped.
That was good. It's good.
It was okay.
It was good.
You don't need to.
Come on, I'm giving you your props.
You are, and I appreciate that. Look, you as our leader in terms of hosting, fronting these things. You're a master at the ad read. I'm just trying to step out from the shadow and do all I can do.
I'm giving you your props here.
Thank you. Manscaped, the leaders in below-the-waist grooming. With Manscaped Performance Package 4.0, your skill position will be sleek and smooth enough for a sub 4.340. Support us and head to manscaped.com and use the exclusive code PFF at checkout for 20% off and free shipping. Because of their ceramic blade and skin-safe technology, your nicks and snags will be reduced. In the season of trimming the roster, Manscaped will make sure you're cutting the right players and not any important pieces to your D. Look, fellas, don't fall off her draft board. The ladies out there think that long nose hair is a major turnoff. And I've made this point every single time. That really isn't a lady-specific thing. Long nose hair, not good.
Right.
I don't care if
not
you're a lady.
Good for me.
I don't care if you're a man. I don't care where you are.
No.
Long nose hair. Get rid of it. The Weed Whacker, I love the way the Weed Whacker TM, trademark.
Yeah, right.
It's proprietary Weed Whacker technology.
You gotta get the legal team in here for that.
Nose and ear hair trimmer is your solution. Why not use the best tools for the job here? April is draft season, but it's also Testicular Cancer Awareness Month. Manscaped has partnered with the Testicular Cancer Society to bring awareness to testicular cancer, men's health, and early cancer detection. Get 20% off and free shipping with the code PFF at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com. And use the code PFF. Turn your Mr. Irrelevant into a first-round pick with Manscaped.
There it is. Topical.
Done.
Love it.
Now, I want to stay in the overrated thing just for a little bit and hit the Trayvon Walker thing briefly.
Okay. Briefly.
We've talked about this a lot.
Briefly.
So I want to hear your take on Trayvon Walker generally and Trayvon Walker potentially going number one overall.
I think the number one overall talk with Trayvon Walker is a sign of what the NFL thinks of this draft class.
First of all, do you think it's real?
No.
Okay.
No, I don't. I don't actually think that it's real that he would go number one overall. I think the Jags are going to take Aidan Hutchinson, and I'm trying to think of why they would put out there that maybe they wouldn't, but maybe it's from other teams as well. So no, to answer your question, okay. I don't think it's real. Trayvon Walker, I got to sit down and talk to him. I did a feature interview over at PFF.com. He's awesome. Small town background, all about football, family loves football. I mean, it's just he's an outdoors dude. It's just, he was such a great guy. Just all smiles the whole time, talking about football, talking about Georgia, talking about the NFL, everything. And so I totally understand why NFL teams who would maybe sit in a room with him for 15, 30 minutes absolutely love him, because he was fantastic. He was a joy to interview and get to know. So I definitely understand that part of it and why teams would want to buy in on it. Then you get to the fact that he's an absolute freak when it comes to athletic and build. I mean, there is his one-to-one comp is 0, right? The closest thing that we have to what Trayvon Walker was able to do at the Combine is Danielle Hunter. And Danielle Hunter was tested similarly at 20 less pounds. He was 250, and Trayvon Walker's 270. It's insane. Now, Danielle Hunter also works as a comp for the lack of production, right? He was a younger prospect, didn't play a ton at LSU, only started 2 years, had 1 year of really good production, 1 year of okay production, but Danielle Hunter was taken in the third round. We weren't talking about Danielle Hunter going number one overall, which is kind of crazy. So if you bring it in the number one overall talk, 2 names came to mind for me: Mario Williams and Jadeveon Clowney. Mario Williams was a player who was a pass rusher who was thought to be so athletically gifted that you just have to pick him over the likes of Reggie Bush, over the likes of Vince Young, that class there in 2006. But Mario Williams left NC State with the all-time sack record. Right. So he had the production. So that was even different there. Jadeveon Clowney, you look at it and you go, okay, people thought of him as more of an athlete than a pass rusher, which is, I think, the way that people would talk about Trayvon Walker.
Sure.
But the thing with Clowney is, Clowney won Defensive Player of the Year in college football in 2012. He was all SEC multiple years, and so he had the accolades that Trayvon Walker doesn't. It is a massive projection. I think that Trayvon Walker is good. I think that the potential is high. I had him as edge 6 2 months ago when I did my edge rush rankings for the podcast. I had him as my sixth edge rusher. I had him as a early second round pick, kind of a player with film. And I thought because of the athleticism, he was going to get bumped up into the first round. We were talking about a back half of the first round kind of a player. Guy that you love to take a chance on, develop into a pass rusher. Now we're freaking talking about him going number 1, number 2 overall. And it's like, okay, how did we get here? And I think we got here because the league wants to hit home runs. They're looking at this class and they're going, it's okay. Where are the home runs? Give me the franchise changers. I'm going to go try to pick him. So, no, I do not believe that he is going to go number 1 overall. But I think that top 5, top 7 hype is real. And I think that's because teams really love the ceiling.
And the thing that I think is really driving it is it's the completeness of the athletic profile. So I think Jadeveon Clowney is actually a pretty good comp. But the one thing that's different is Jadeveon Clowney was always a little bit stiff. Right? Didn't have the sort of bend, the fluidity, the turn. And you can see that in the measurables, right? When you look at as much as we sort of look at the combine drills and we're like, these are kind of silly. It's like they are designed to sort of show specific things, right? So the 3-cone, that's supposed to be able to show you that guy's ability to bend and twist and get around the corner, the stuff that you want a pass rusher to do. Jadeveon Clowney's 3-cone was 7.27, 40th percentile. Trayvon Walker's 3-cone, 6.89, 94th percentile.
Unbelievable.
And if you're sort of looking at the thing to illustrate just how freaky Trayvon Walker's measurables workout profile was, he has nothing lower than the 72nd percentile.
He's nuts.
Nothing. We have 98th percentile arm length, 97th percentile 40-yard dash time, 94th percentile 3-cone, 86th broad jump. Like, everything is nuts. So that, I think, is the thing that's really differentiating from almost every other, athletic, not good pass rusher you can think of, right? Is most of those guys were missing something in the profile. They didn't have a good 3-cone, or they didn't have a good 40 time, or they didn't have a good one of the jumps, the thing that's supposed to show explosion, or they had shorter arms, or there's something missing.
Yep.
With Walker, there's literally nothing missing in the athletic profile or the physical dimensions or the measurables makeup. So if that's what you're hanging your hat on, you are looking at a very, very rare specimen, I guess is the way of phrasing it, because we're not just talking about the measurables, we're talking about the size and the length and everything. It's all there. So really the only question is, okay, but where was the production?
I think the career projection that you want for him is Rashawn Gary, right? And I see the chat talking about Rashawn Gary, and I've thought about him as well. And when you look at Rashawn Gary's PFF grades, wow, what did Gary go? Was he 12? He go 12 overall in 2019? Something.
Yeah, I think so.
He went top 15. And so obviously he didn't go number 1 overall, but a lot of people were like, okay, well, this is a guy who was touted as a potential top 5 pick, didn't exactly have the production that you wanted at Michigan.
12.
Yeah, so nailed it. It's like I do this for a living. But when you look at Rashawn Gary's grades in PFF over his career, 2019, he had a 54 overall grade. Then he bumped it up to a 67. And then this past year, an 89.3. That's kind of the trajectory that you're hoping for with Trayvon Walker. You can't sit here and think that he's going to be a double-digit sack guy for you in the first 2 years. It's likely not going to happen. Now, what you hope happens is you hope that he gets 5 or 6 sacks for you next year, somewhere around like 8 or 9 the next year, and then maybe double-digit sacks the year after, and then you hope the year after as well, and you hope that he becomes a really, really good pass rusher with that athletic ability. It took Gary a couple of years to figure it out, and now he's playing really well. I mean, he had an 88.9 pass rush grade this past season. That's fantastic. That's really good. And that's the kind of athletic profile that we're talking about here. But again, Gary goes outside the top 10.
Yeah.
Trayvon Walker might go number 2 overall.
And Gary was more productive in college. Like
what did Gary have in college? I can't remember.
He was good, but it was inconsistency rather than just not there. Whereas
he had the opportunities for sure.
Sure. Whereas,
so he did hit. He had 9.5. Oh wait, no, that's Green Bay. That's this past year. College stats. That's what I need to look up. College, he had 5.5 sacks his sophomore year, and he had 3.5 his junior year.
Yeah, but he was. I think he had significantly better PFF grades than Trayvon Walker did. Like his issue was a lot more of an inconsistency rather than a total absence of pass rush. Like his grade was 71, 78, 82, getting consistently better, putting him in a higher level. He had 50 pressures his penultimate season at Michigan, where he played a lot more.
His what?
Penultimate.
Penultimate?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Last but one.
Oh. I don't know if I've ever heard that word before.
Really? I didn't think that was an unusual word.
Penultimate? Come on.
What?
Chad, help me out here, please.
It's
Like,
a word.
like even if you've heard the word penultimate before, it's not like a common thing that you're just throwing out there and then being shocked that somebody else hasn't heard it.
Look, it's not a word that people use regularly every day in conversation. I didn't think it was one that was going to stop the conversation.
Okay, all right.
Halt it and discuss the.
Look, I will use it later today.
Good.
In a common situation.
Excellent. That's all I'm looking. That's all I asked for.
Okay, good.
Yeah, there you go. See, it's a word.
Penultimate. Wow. Spelled exactly how I thought it was going to be spelled.
Yeah,
But,
spelled as it says.
yep.
It's
Look at that.
right there in Google in the dictionary.
Look at that. Look at that. Look at that.
We're just educating people.
Maybe I'm an idiot.
So I think two things. Like Gary was a little bit more productive than Walker, and two, again, he's got this sort of clowny thing of we're not quite there with the 3-cone time that Walker has, which goes in his favor.
Chat says it's pretty common, so I guess I'm just not paying attention enough.
Or an idiot. Whichever.
So, yeah, probably that one.
Rough way to find out.
Yeah, it's tough.
Live
Tough.
on the podcast.
Hey, look, the chat's got to let me know. They got to keep me honest.
So we're both, everybody, it seems to be in agreement that Trayvon Walker is a little bit overrated based off everything. The athletic measurables are there, but how is that ever? In what percentage of his range of outcomes is that going to justify a top 5 pick?
Darius said he's never heard it in his life. There you go. In the chat.
You can't take the one guy.
No. That's what NFL teams are doing with Trayvon Walker. They're taking the one guy. See, boom, transition.
The next in
No, I completely agree with you. It's crazy. I felt like this was going to be a back half of the first round guy. Again, it's kind of the Jordan Davis thing. You look at the class overall. You go, okay, it's not star-studded. It's not the 2021 class, right? If we're in the 2021 class last year, where's Trayvon Walker getting taken? Probably somewhere in the teens, probably in the late teens is where we're taking Trayvon Walker. But this class is just different, and there's not a lot of, kind of like what we talked about a few minutes ago, that Hollywood factor, that what sticks out at you, these prospects that you just gravitate towards. There's not that as much in this class, and so people are aiming for the fences.
Now we got to finish it with something optimistic. Who else is underrated?
Okay, can I give like a sleeper? Can I go like a sleeper?
Yeah.
Okay. Devin Tompkins, wide receiver from Utah State. I'm going to tell you his measurables right now, and you're going to be shocked.
Okay.
5'8".
Okay.
$155.
All right.
Never seen a player play bigger in my entire life. He is wild. He almost led the country in receiving yards this past year. And when I say that, I don't just mean that he was taking bubble screens to the house. Now, he has good yards after the catch ability, but they would throw this dude 50-50 balls, and he would go up on corners and go get it. And look, when I say that he's a sleeper, I mean that he's a true sleeper. Sure. I'm not advocating for this guy to go in day 1 or even day 2. But on day 3, probably late day 3 because of his measurables, he is such a fascinating player who had such incredible production over the last couple of years at Utah State. And I got to interview him as well. And I asked him straight up, I was like, my guy, have you ever tried to gain weight? You ever tried to get any bigger? And he laughed and he's like, dude, I eat pasta every day.
How much do you think, he's 5'8", how much weight can he gain?
He said, I eat a box of pasta every day. And he's like, I don't gain weight. He's at one point, he said, I got up to like 165-ish. And it's just like I didn't like how I felt at 165, so I just went back down 155, 160. Go watch his highlight film. It is very fun. He had like I said, a ton of production. I've seen very few players play bigger, and so he is like a true draft sleeper for me.
We have in our measurables database, we have him at 5'7", so maybe they were.
I asked him.
Oh yeah.
I said, "How tall are you?" He said 5'8".
Well, he's not the one measuring it.
You
get the official guy with the flat thing over the head.
I seem like a.
We also have him at 167 though, so maybe. Those, by the way, rank in the first and second percentile for wide receivers.
I'm shocked it got into the second percentile, dude. I'm shocked.
That's like it because Calvin Austin is one of my guys that I've been talking about all draft process as somebody that's underrated, somebody I think could be a really good player at the next level. Austin has the same kind of thing, right? Tiny, like single-digit percentiles in everything physical, but offsets it with like 95th percentile and everything like fast, right? Mm-hmm. Quickness, speed, vertical, broad, all those things.
I know you're a TikTok guy now. You're a budding TikTok star.
Uh-huh.
There's a trend on TikTok right now in like the football community where like you list off all the negatives about a guy's like player profile and whatever, and then in the positives it just says he's got that dog in him, and that's like what you just said reminded me of that, like, oh, the measurables are terrible, like all that, like just don't bet on it, but then he's got that dog in him.
But the thing with Calvin Austin is like, if you're gonna be that size, you had better be the freakiest, fast, quick, like speedster in the world, otherwise you're gonna get murdered. Right, and he at least does. Your guy, they're not bad.
They're not bad.
But they're not 95th plus percentile.
Hey, look, we're drafting Calvin Austin in like round 3. We're drafting Devin Tompkins in like round 7. Okay?
Right,
I'm talking sleepers. Sleep. Every time I talk about a sleeper and I bring him to the table, everybody poops on him just because I'm not bringing up like a second or third round pick. So, no, I think that he's somebody that I like. Another guy who is getting a little bit of steam on social media lately is Jeremy Ruckert, the tight end out of Ohio State. I think he's really underrated. He could possibly be the best tight end in this entire class. Came to Ohio State as a fringe 4-star, 5-star receiving kind of a tight end, became more of a blocking tight end because that's what they asked him to do. And when they've given him the ability to be a receiver, he has shown that he has that ability to do it. I think that his best days are ahead of him, no doubt about it. I think he's a really good, fluid athlete who now, because of his tape in the last couple of years, blocks really well as is a good wide receiver. I think he brings the total profile, and it's so funny how we do this with players every single year. Jeremy Ruckert was draft eligible last year. And I remember doing mock drafts in December and January up before the date where you could declare for the draft. And I would do mock drafts, and we were getting to the point where Jeremy Ruckert was going like late round 2, early round 3, at worst round 4, in a lot of these mock drafts for teams. And then we started doing mock draft projections because he went back to Ohio State. And then, like, I remember in like August and September, we're starting to do mock draft projections, and people have Jeremy Ruckert in the 6th, 7th round. I'm like, did he get worse at football? I don't really understand what happened here. And now we're climbing back up to the fact that he's probably going to be a 3rd-round pick, like he was literally all along. But it's very funny how I have to call him a sleeper now,
right?
Because people, I mean, maybe I contribute to this as well, but like people just like had him way lower as a prospect. And I was sitting here like, did he get worse at football over the summer? Did he get his leg amputated? Did I miss something? Did a couple of hands chopped off? I don't really know what happened here. And he ends up, I think he's one of the best, more well-rounded tight ends in this class.
All right, let's move on to the quarterbacks.
Okay.
Because that, I think, is the driving force behind sort of defining almost everything with this draft, right? We're focusing on Aidan Hutchinson, Trayvon Walker at the top of the draft, and the reason we're doing that is because there's no quarterback worthy of the number 1 spot. Okay, Jacksonville wouldn't be taking them even if they were, but that's the thing that usually sets the table for the draft. Mm-hmm. So what is your overall view of this group of quarterbacks?
I mean, it's not even close to last year's class. I think that kind of goes without saying. But I also think that we're going to get 3 quarterbacks in the first round this year. I think that teams are just too thirsty to get a quarterback. It means too much if you hit on one of these guys. I think that Malik Willis is probably going to be the first quarterback off the board unless Carolina picks Kenny Pickett at 6, which I have heard could be a thing. Outside of Kenny Pickett going at 6, I think every other team would probably pick Willis over
Where
Kenny.
are you on Kenny Pickett? Because I say this like it's unique to him, but almost every single quarterback in this class, the top 5 or 6, divides opinion insanely, right? Mm-hmm. But I have heard, like, I don't like Kenny Pickett that much at all. Mike Renner doesn't like him. But I've also heard from people that work in NFL teams that are like, Kenny Pickett's the only guy that has any shot of being a good quarterback in this draft. So to me, if Carolina drafts Kenny Pickett at 6, it's not madness because they need a quarterback and they have to do something crazy to make it happen. But like mistakes have been made, right?
I think that it would be pretty crazy for them to draft Kenny Pickett as QB1 at 6, especially considering they have Sam Darnold there. Like I think that Kenny Pickett's a short-term starter at best in the NFL. I do. I think that his floor is high. I don't think that he's going to be a terrible quarterback. I think he could have a long career in the NFL. But there's not a ton that I saw from him that makes me think this guy is going to be a franchise changer. This guy is going to be a long-term starter. Unfortunately, when I watch him, even his really good year this past year, and Kenny's another dude that I've had the chance to sit down and get to know, and I know teams are going to absolutely love him. But when I watch Pickett, I unfortunately feel like I'm watching somebody who is always going to be that quarterback where teams go, can we upgrade? And I think that kind of a player is dangerous to pick at 6 to pick at 6 overall as QB1 in a class, no matter how low the class is. And I think that's why most teams, I would say, would probably have Malik Willis ahead of Kenny Pickett, because if you're taking a chance on a guy in the first round, at least you were taking a high chance on him. So I think that's why ultimately Willis, I would say, is probably going to be that first quarterback taken, like I said, unless Carolina ends up making the move. They're the only team that I feel like I've heard loves Pickett. I'm sure there probably are others, but just from what I've heard. And then I think that Desmond Ridder also gets in the first round. That's what I think. I think it's going to be those 3 guys. I think it'll be Willis who goes 1. I think Pickett will go 2. And then I think Desmond Ridder goes somewhere in the back end of the first round. I think some team's either going to trade up to get that 5th-year option on his contract at the back end of the first round. Could get a 4th quarterback in there, but the way that I would say is I think at least 3 are going, maybe 4, depending on how it falls and who might like Matt Corral or Sam Howell the most.
Do you think that Pickett can start and be good, be reasonable early? Because that seems to be the sort of the crux of the Pickett argument, is that narrative that, well, if you need a guy to start day 1, you want him more than, Willis or one of these other projects.
I would tell you you'd want Ridder over anybody else. I think that you would want Ridder as a player who could start right away in the NFL, because he does a lot of the little things about quarterbacking very well. Seth Galina, obviously over at with us at PFF, he does a great job of highlighting quarterback play, and he's even gone through how Ridder manages the pocket is already pretty advanced for a college prospect making it into the NFL. His mechanics are super clean. You could tell that he's worked on it a ton over the last 2 years. He knows how to go through progressions in an offense. It's not this one read, tuck it and run kind of a thing. With Pickett, he is a little skittish in the pocket. He's bailing from the pocket sometimes when he doesn't have to, and he makes great plays when he's outside of the pocket, but you've got to really be able to play within structure. For as much as we love to pick those guys who know how to play outside of structure, like Malik Willis, right? I think a lot of people, when you look at Malik Willis and you go, hey, show me what you love about him, they're probably going to show you a play where it breaks down, right, where he leaves the pocket, something that's out of structure. And those plays are obviously good. It's those split-second decision kind of things that you want to see from a potential franchise quarterback, because in the handful of times those do happen in the game, you want to know you have somebody that you can lean on. But most of the game happens within structure, and you still have to be great within structure to make that happen. So I would tell you that Ridder's definitely got the highest floor. I don't think that Pickett is this guy who can come in right away for you and get you a 500 or above win season in the NFL. I really don't. I think that he, just like most of the rest of this class, like Corral, like Howell, like those guys, needs to sit and learn and really understand life in the NFL and the speed of the NFL and how to get the most out of their talents. And so, no, I think that people who, at least this is my opinion, I think the people who have that evaluation of Pickett wouldn't be correct. That's not to say you can't like him as a quarterback.
Sure.
I still just think that even if you like him as a quarterback and what he could be in the NFL, he is a year or 2 away from really hitting his stride, if you will, and being this maybe above 500, double-digit win kind of a quarterback. I think he's a little bit further than that.
Yeah, that's what not worries me, but that's what I disagree with the Kenny Pickett stuff. The idea that Carolina would take him at 6 may well be happening. May well 100% be the thing that's going to happen, because Carolina is desperate at this point and have to do something. But if you're drafting a quarterback at 6, if you're Carolina, it's because you clearly have no faith in Sam Darnold, and I think that's entirely justified and reasonable. So this guy's going to start day 1, and you need him to be quite good. Otherwise, everybody in that building's getting fired. I don't think Kenny Pickett is that guy. He's not helping you year 1, because the stuff that he's bad at is the stuff that's going to get exaggerated by a young quarterback in the NFL.
That's why him going to Carolina is bad.
Yeah.
Objectively bad. There are other places that would be a lot better for him.
At least 2 of these other quarterback prospects, I think, are better for Carolina year 1.
Yes,
because that's what they're focused on, right?
Correct.
I think Malik Willis brings a higher floor, because at least he'll give you the rushing threat, which we've seen with Jalen Hurts. That buys you a lot of wiggle room to not be great as a passer. Mm-hmm. The idea that at any given moment you can run around and pick up 8 yards and move the chains, and then you've got 3 more downs to try and figure it out as a passer. And then Desmond Ridder, as you said, is just better at the more advanced NFL stuff of being a quarterback, pocket manipulation, not having to run around every play and make try and make something happen with your legs, which gets harder in the NFL, right? Kenny Pickett is a good athlete, but I don't know where he is on that, what I call the kind of Christian Ponder syndrome scale. Like, there's a lot of quarterbacks that are good athletes in college and can run around and beat defensive linemen to the edge and get first downs, who aren't at the NFL level, right? And that, to me, that was Christian Ponder, right? His issue was he never learned, ever, that he was no longer that athlete. So he would his entire career was him like bailing from a pocket, running the sideline, and getting chased down by a 320-pound defensive tackle that in college he could outrun, in the NFL he couldn't. So I don't know where Pickett is on that scale, whether he's a good enough athlete that he's now able to outrun those guys, or if he becomes a Christian Ponder type of player where it's like every single play you're like, dude, you can't do that anymore. Like, I think Christian Ponder was on the negative end of that scale. I think Baker Mayfield is on the negative end of that scale. And then the other end of it is like Patrick Mahomes, right, where the dude is always a step ahead of the dude chasing him, regardless of how fast that guy is. It's a tricky line to kind of tread, but if you're going to be that type of player, you need to be on the Patrick Mahomes end of it rather than the other end. So to me, like if you're Carolina and you're like, we need to come away with a day one starter at number 6, that's the plan. Pickett is at least the third best guy for you. Not number 1.
Yeah, I might have Pickett even behind Corral for Carolina specifically. Now there's a lot of other teams where you could do different big boards, but it's Carolina picking Kenny Pickett as QB1 would be something for him to just replace Sam Darnold. And I kind of view Sam Darnold and Kenny Pickett similarly, where these are just like short-term starters at this point. These are guys that you can play for a little bit, but then figure out who you can draft next, and that's kind of where I see their ceilings.
So we have the kind of top group of quarterbacks. 3, maybe 4 go in the first round. 5 go somewhere, early day 2. What I kind of thought going through this group is that it's not even great when you get to the depth. Like usually you get to these mid-round guys and low-round guys, and you see a bunch of players where you're like, all right, there's something to like about this guy. We can get somewhere. Maybe we've got a couple of career backups. Maybe we've got, somebody with the tools to be a starting quarterback down the line. Like the further you get into this class, it doesn't get any better. It's just underwhelming top to bottom. Is there anyone you like in the lower down group?
Bailey Zappi is the only other one who's outside of those names that we mentioned, where he had a lot of stats playing at Western Kentucky. He had a lot of stats playing at Houston Baptist as well before then. His offense coordinator, Zach Kitley, actually went with him, because Zach Kitley went from Houston Baptist to Western Kentucky first. Then both Jareth Stearns and Bailey Zappi went with them to Western Kentucky. And so the stats that we saw this past year was a culmination of 3 years working with the same guy in a very pass-happy kind of an offense. But he executed it well. And, when it comes to – I think of this with running backs as well. There's something to running backs who score touchdowns a lot. Like, when you get close to the end zone, they just think to themselves, this is what I do. Like, this isn't special. Like, I'm not, about to score a touchdown for the first time and wonder what my touchdown celebration is going to be. Like, I score touchdowns. This is what I do. I get to the 2-yard line. Somebody's tackling me. The legs are still churning. Like, I'm going, this is just what happens. I read things correctly in short spaces. And so you almost, have that mentality. I think that also kind of goes to quarterbacks a little bit, where you don't want to pick a quarterback that hasn't produced, not just because of the stats, but also because of the confidence level. Like, Bailey Zappi completes first downs. He keeps the chains moving. He hits bomb passes. He throws touchdowns. Like, this is just what he does. It's what he's been doing for 3 straight years. Not only does he have an NFL arm, no. So you're not picking this guy over more talented players, but for a quarterback that you would want in the mid rounds to be your backup, you'd want somebody to come in who's not going to crap his pants when he has the opportunity to make a big time throw. I think that Bailey Zappi at least brings you that, and I think that that's something that you like about his scouting report. But other than him, yeah, it's nothing. I got nothing, man. I really do.
Yeah, Zappi reminded me a little bit of Case Keenum, like a thick Case Keenum.
Yeah, sure.
He's got some chunk to him.
Thick Case Keenum. That's funny.
Do you think that Carson Strong is being underrated in this draft class?
Yeah, so actually that's look, I didn't mention Carson Strong, and I should have put Carson Strong's name in with Sam Howell and Matt Corral in that second round. I didn't mean to say that there was nobody, including Carson Strong, that I wouldn't pick. I think Carson Strong has got a really nice arm. I think that he's got some really big-time throws that we saw from Nevada. The knee, I guess, checked out medically, which is good. I got to do a feature sit down with Carson as well, and I asked him straight up. I was like, look, I'm going to hear a lot of hearsay about your knee.
Yeah.
You tell me about your knee. Like, what is it? What happened? And he said I don't remember the medical term of it, but essentially he said what probably happened is he probably injured his knee when he was about 11 or 12 years old. And when you're 11 or 12 years old and you injure your knee, he didn't like tear a ligament or anything. He said probably something just happened. I landed on it a little weird. And when you're a kid, you don't think anything of it. You just keep playing. This is what he said. You just keep playing at recess or whatever. He's like, for years, I probably just normal wear and tear, playing, running, jogging, everything, playing football eventually on this knee to where eventually he got to his senior year. He's starting to have a lot of knee pain. They did this MRI on him, and they're basically like, oh, yeah, you got like no cartilage in your knee, bud. And so they did like a short-term surgery for him to make sure that he would be able to go to college and keep his scholarship and play. And he did it in Nevada. And then he had another surgery last year, about a year ago this time, where it was more long-term surgery to help his knee condition. Because a lot of people looked at his knee and they were like, this dude's a ticking time bomb.
Right.
Like, don't even draft him. Don't even touch him. But this long-term procedure that he had, the outlook on it is much, much better, to the point where he actually improved in his health as this past season went on. He got, I guess, a good medical recheck at the combine and everything. And so as long as the knee checks out, and we're not talking about a Brandon Roy situation, right, where you draft him and you go, it's only a matter of time before his knees go, and then look what happened. He became a really great player for the Portland Trailblazers, and his knee ended his career.
Right.
It's not that, apparently. So if not, then you've got a guy who's got a really nice arm. Now, he's not the most mobile dude in the world. So for football becoming faster, needing more mobile guys from the quarterback position, he's kind of a throwback quarterback, if you will. He's more of a pocket manager. But I still think that he's got a nice arm. He understands how to attack deep. He's got a mentality for that. And that's a player that I think you at least think about in somewhere on day two, although, information would tell you if you're drafting a quarterback on day two, he's probably not going to be good anyways. But that's kind of where I see Carson Strong.
Yeah, obviously the knee is its own issue. And, if you're not inside the team's medical rooms and have access to all of it, it's tough to know. Assuming his knee checks out and teams are happy with it, then all you're dealing with, quote unquote, is a guy that can't really move anymore in a league that's becoming more and more important. So, yeah. You can still be a really good quarterback if that's your style. Immobile pocket passer. Like the best quarterback of all time fits that category, right? Tom Brady is still in the league, still carving people up.
Right.
But you kind of have to be Tom Brady now in order to get away with that.
Right.
Because everybody else, like when is the last good quarterback to come into the league that couldn't move? So it's like the problem with saying, Tom Brady's still doing, but Tom Brady's been in the league for like 28 years.
Who is the
that's
last
the thing, right?
QB who is good?
So that's the more relevant question. It's not like, can you still be good if you're Tom Brady because you're Tom Brady? It's like, when was the last Tom Brady to come into the NFL and thrive in that style of play? Because that's what Carson Strong's up against. Not, can he be Tom Brady? Can he buck the trend of the fact that one of those guys hasn't come around for a long time?
I'm looking at this list and I'm trying to think of who. I mean, Mac Jones played well last year and he can't move.
He kind of can though. Mac Jones got a lot of crap for being a terrible athlete, but it was relative to Justin Fields and Trey Lance and Zach Wilson and Trevor Lawrence. But Mac Jones ran a 4.7.
Teddy Bridgewater.
Again, Teddy's not the worst athlete in the world. That dude spends half his life
Yeah, but he's a pure pocket.
Sure,
passer.
but he's
not rushing.
But again, the difference between a Teddy Bridgewater and a Mac Jones caliber athlete and a Tom Brady caliber athlete. We're talking about a guy
Davis Mills.
Again, Davis Mills can move. We're not. Who's the last statue to come along?
Well, I don't know if there's any that exists.
That's what I'm saying.
Peyton Manning.
That's Carson Strong's problem. Is that if he's going to be
Matt Ryan.
If he's going to be that guy, you got to go back a decade and a half to find the last one of those that was good.
Yeah,
that's his issue.
That's all I got.
Even if you're happy with the knee, it's when was the last one of those dudes to thrive? Because
somebody said Big Ben in the chat, but
no,
Big Ben can scoot.
Yeah, dude, you go
not
back.
Not last year's Big Ben.
No,
obviously,
when we watched when Big Ben retired, right, and you started to get the the highlights of like, hey, remember
Big Ben
this
was
guy?
also in the same draft class as Eli Manning, which would have been the better answer.
Right. Well, you go back, like you watch some of those early Big Ben highlights, you're like, oh, I forgot he could move like that.
Right.
Like
right.
this is a different
right.
player.
Yes.
Like
100%.
that, like we forget what Big Ben looked like early when he was Big Ben.
Somebody also said Phillip Rivers, but Phillip Rivers also same draft class as Eli Manning.
Yeah, I mean,
so like you're picking Eli Manning for going back that far.
That's how far back you're going, right? Whether it's Matt Ryan, whether it's Phillip Rivers, like you're going back before 2010. We are going back more than a decade for the last one of these QBs to come into the league that plays that style and is good.
Somebody said Big Ben never scooted; he meandered. That's fair. That's probably fair.
Big Ben, what's the best word to describe how he moved? Is
it like an accelerated waddle almost?
Careened. He
Careened?
Yeah, he careened from one like impact to the next within the pocket, like just like the bumper cars, right? What do you guys call them? It's a different name.
No, they're bumper cars.
The bumper cars here?
Yeah.
Okay. He was
Has somebody called them something different?
I think so.
Like rubber cars?
Yeah, like the ones with the big stick that comes out and wires them into the ceiling.
Right,
carnivals and stuff.
Yeah, that's bumper cars.
Yeah, he was a human bumper car. That was how he maneuvered. Like just careen from one impact to the next, and then somewhere along the line pump faked and then heaved the ball somewhere. That was how Big Ben moved.
People are saying Andrew Luck, and like Andrew Luck was a pocket passer, but Andrew Luck was also an athlete.
Yes, like a real athlete.
Yeah.
What's the most famous Andrew Luck pass you can think of? It's the one
something to T.Y. Hilton that's 60 yards down the field.
The one of him being like throwing an absolute dime, like a massive big time throw, whilst being like tackled by the ankles out of the pocket, running away.
Oh yeah,
that guy was not. That's not your statue pocket passer. Anyway, the point being, if Carson Strong is going to be good, and I agree, or I'm pushing the point that he's underrated, and I think we should be talking about him with the Sam Howells and the Matt Corrals and those guys. The problem he has to deal with is like he plays a style of football that doesn't really exist anymore, and it's not that it can't succeed because we know like Tom Brady's still there. Phillip Rivers was still playing fine before he went.
Can't compare literally anybody to Tom.
I know, but like Phillip Rivers only just left. He was still playing that way. Like Matt Ryan is still capable of good play with that style. The point being, though, that like you have to go back that far to find the last one of those guys to come in who plays that style and was good. So it's just not a big target to be hitting if you're Carson Strong.
Somebody said Joe Montana. If we got to go back that far, we're screwed.
Also not true. Like Joe Montana, you go back and watch early Montana games, and the thing that they are telling you about is his mobility.
Yeah.
He can scramble. Yeah. And that was like a miracle.
That's what Walsh loved about him, right?
Yeah,
I mean, he was just different.
That was seen as like miraculous at the time. This guy, not only can he do it in the pocket, but he can scramble. Like he'll make a play outside of the pocket. That was seen as like a big thing. It's actually wild when you go back into history and you start watching old players or whatever, how cyclical it is, right? Because like I said, Joe Montana's selling point was his mobility. Now, relative to, Lamar Jackson, it's like a different world.
Right.
You go back, like the thing that preceded Joe Montana was a bunch of these dudes that couldn't move. And then Joe Montana comes along. It's like, wow, now we need scramblers. We get the Brett Favres of the world. We get all these guys that can move, make plays outside of structure. And then Tom Brady, Peyton Manning come in, and the next decade is these pocket passers. Now we need these guys that'll stand tall in the pocket, deliver. You know what I mean? It's like it just goes in these cycles.
Yeah.
And now we're back to needing, like again, it's a decade since the last one of those dudes. Now you need mobility, otherwise you're not thriving in the NFL. But maybe we're like one dude. We're the next Tom Brady away from like everybody's going to be chasing the next immobile statue pocket passer.
Can't wait for the Tennessee Titans to make 13 personnel their base and just run the football again and just beat everybody. Just draft only offensive linemen. We're going back to it. You mentioned it's cyclical. We're going back to it. We're going back to it.
Always goes in cycles. All right. Anything else you want to hit about this draft class? You wanted to talk trades.
Oh, yeah. I had just if we wanted to have this talking point about the top 10, I really do think that basically every team in the top 10 is going to look to move back at some point.
But the problem with that is it requires teams looking to move up. So who are those teams?
Right. And, I look at the New Orleans Saints and what they did with the Philadelphia Eagles. I think that was for a purpose. I don't think it was necessarily just to stick at 16 and 19. I think they're looking for a massive trade up. I'd even heard before that trade went down that there was potential with them having a deal maybe up to like 4, 5, 6 with either the New York teams or Carolina to go move up to get an offensive tackle. I was told that was maybe there were some talks of that happening, so that could still be on there. If Atlanta's going to draft a wide receiver at 8, for the love of God, trade back. Like, for the love of God, trade back. You don't need to draft a wide receiver at 8 in this draft class. There are 6 wide receivers that are all really damn good. You could talk to people who have Garrett Wilson as wide receiver 1. I have Garrett Wilson as my wide receiver 5. Like, you could talk to people who have Traylon Burks at wide receiver 1. Like, all this kinds of stuff. If you're Atlanta, your roster is bad, mega bad. What you would want to do is, if somebody wants a quarterback specifically behind you, Steelers at 20, I know is the big example, but I don't know anybody. Shoot, even if the Chargers want to get a grab, like if the Chargers think that Jordan Davis is their answer and they can't leave this draft without him, or maybe it's an offensive tackle for the Chargers. They want to get an offensive tackle, get a young offensive tackle to replace Brian Bulaga and pair him with Rashawn Slater. Trade back to 17 or 20 or something. Go get a first-round pick next year. Go impose your will on next year's draft if you're the Atlanta Falcons. And so those are some areas that I like some trade backs. I think that the Jets could very easily trade back from number 10. I think that's a really nice point in the draft to where you're getting kind of that tail end of the guys that everybody would think would be worth a top 10 selection. Maybe somebody's still there. They drop back not too far, get some draft capital next year. So, I don't know. Those are just a handful of things that I've had as talking points that I believe a lot of teams are going to look to move back in the top 10.
I mean, I think the 2 New York teams in particular should be absolutely open for business to, aside from anything else, to flipping one of those first-round picks to next year. Like, that's the selling point for the Jets and the Giants as much as anything. Do you think the Panthers should be trying to trade back from 6? Because they picked 6. The next pick is until 137, and they need some help. But the one thing you have in your favor picking 6, if you're going the quarterback route, the one thing is that you probably have your pick, right?
So I wrote an article last week, and it was 3 trades that I would hate. And one of the trades that I would hate is Carolina moving from 6, because moving back from 6. And the reason is because you're not really going to do anything for your team for you moving back a couple of spots other than not hitting on an offensive tackle that you desperately need, or not hitting on a quarterback that you desperately need.
What if
Carolina is not in position to say, nah, we're not going to draft one of Ike Ekwonu, Evan Neal, or Charles Cross. We're going to trade back a couple of picks and settle for Trevor Penning, or like Bernard Raymond,
but if it's
Kenyon Green.
But if it's a quarterback in this draft where the quarterbacks are not worth the top 10 picks, right? If they're able to trade back and still grab still grab a quarterback.
That, sure, but you're playing a massive risk then at that point.
Yeah.
Because I guess it depends where you're trading back to.
And it also depends which quarterback you're looking at.
But, like, if you're moving from 6 to... I guess I just don't know how these quarterbacks are going to go in this draft. And I think it is riskier for you to move back as a team that desperately has a quarterback. Getting cute with quarterback is what got you into this situation in the first place. You cannot get cute and try to bargain shop for a quarterback. If you need one, if you have one on the board, freaking draft it. It's not going to make a difference if you move back from 6 to 12 and pick up a 3rd-round pick this year and a 3rd-round pick next year. It's not really going to matter. If you get a 2nd-round pick, I guess maybe you think about it, especially if you don't think the quarterback's going to be gone. But then how many picks are you? We just said all of these teams could trade back. Seattle could trade back. Yeah. The Jets could trade back. The Washington could trade back. How many of these teams could all trade back with a team that might want a quarterback, and then all of a sudden you get jumped and oops, your guy's gone. Oh, guess we're settling for Kenny Pickett or a guy that we didn't really want, or Malik Willis or whatever. That to me seems stupid, especially since it's not going to make that big of a difference for you with Carolina. You have to win. Carolina has to win. Yes, you want to go about the draft the right way, but if Carolina starts 1-5, they're going to fire Matt Rule in week 6. They ain't going to waste any time. That's how hot this guy's seat is. Scott Fitterer is the exact same way. Now, I don't think that I say exact same way. It's not the exact same way. His seat is not as hot as Matt Rule's is, but Scott Fitterer has to nail this draft. What's he going to go to David Tepper and say, hey, I know that we missed out on the offensive tackle that we needed, and I know we got jumped for a quarterback, but we had the right process. No, they're 3 years into this thing. David Tepper wants to win. So I think that I understand why people would be tempted from a trade down with Carolina because they do not pick until the 4th round. But I don't really see a price where it is worth it for this Carolina team to take control out of their own hands to get an offensive tackle that they can plug and play right away or a quarterback that they can play right away.
I guess, to me, one of the big things is it's which quarterback are you interested in, right? Because we just ridicule the idea of them taking Kenny Pickett at 6. Right? If Kenny Pickett is the quarterback that they think is QB1, like if he's the guy, I think they're wrong. But if Kenny Pickett is the guy that they think is QB1, they can surely pick him later than 6, right? Now, how much later?
Right. That's to me, I get that scared money don't make money, no risk it, no biscuit, all that kinds of stuff. But to me, for Carolina, the risk that it would be that you trade back and all of a sudden that quarterback's not on the board anymore. Because if they're not, right, imagine this world where who picks 12? Let's say the Vikings trade up because they want Evan Neal to draft him to maybe play on the interior and maybe be an offensive tackle later at number 6, right? Okay, let's just say Vikings trade up. They go back to 12. Let's say there's this crazy world where Seattle takes Malik Willis at 9. Mm-hmm. The Jets trade back with the Pittsburgh Steelers and they move up, and the Pittsburgh Steelers take Kenny Pickett at 10. If you're Carolina in that spot, Matt Rule might as well sell his house because that's what it comes down to. If that happens, he might as well put his house on Zillow because it's that is what you're talking. And to me, if this is the route they're going to go, which is always the asterisk and what we have to say when we talk about this conversation, if this is the route they're going to go, to me it is more worth it sticking at 6 and picking the guy that you think actually gives you a chance to turn the franchise around or help your franchise a lot more than picking up an extra 2nd-round pick. Because, I mean, what's a 2nd-round pick maybe going to do for you? Probably not a ton.
The problem is you have other needs.
I know they do, but nothing is more glaring than the 2 positions that they have to nail that would be available to nail at 6.
Agreed. But, the point is, so you need a quarterback, right? That's the one thing that Carolina has to come away from. But the quarterback also needs a left tackle. Otherwise the quarterback's dead.
Right.
So if Carolina can get
you're not nailing both in these draft.
You might. You could. What if you can go back? What if you can trade from 6 to 9 with Seattle? What if Seattle decides they love Malik Willis? They're going to trade up to 6, grab Malik Willis. You can trade back to 9, still get Kenny Pickett, and then Seattle's going to give you one of their 2nd-round picks, the 40 or 41 or whatever it is, to get there. Right? You win that trade. You get to 40, you can pick a tackle at 40, throw that guy in to start. Okay, he's not as good as the tackle you can pick at 6, but you got your quarterback. So in theory, you still get QB1 on your board. You get a tackle with a 2nd-round pick that you didn't have because you were not picking again until 137. And that's maximizing it because you're taking advantage of the fact that we value Kenny Pickett higher than everybody else in this
I
draft.
don't hate it if it works out that way.
Right.
But I think what I'm saying is the risk for them outweighs to me. I see somebody in the chat saying, hey, trade back and go get 1st-rounders next year because then you have capital in a good quarterback draft. Again, if that's the case, fire Matt Rule before the season starts because that's what you're doing.
The other thing, though, that I think they should be aware of, but I think teams are very bad at being aware of this, is there's currency in certainty in certain things, right? So Quentin Nelson was worth more than a guard, even a good guard prospect, because of the degree of certainty of how good he was going to be, right? Everybody, not only were they sure that Quentin Nelson was the best guard in that draft, that was going to be really good, it was like, this guy is nailed on to be an absolute star at the next level. And there's some kind of value in the level of certainty of that versus the next guy who comes along who's the next top guard prospect, right? That the degree of certainty everyone has of how good he's going to be is worth something. This year, nobody has that for the quarterbacks, right? Even if you like one, nobody is sure that these guys are going to be good. So if you're Carolina and you're like, we think Kenny Pickett's the QB1 in this draft. We think he's the guy to be our franchise quarterback. He's the one, he's the long shot that we're taking here, right? We're backed into a corner. All we have is one final long shot to pull a miracle out of this and keep everybody in this building for the next 5 years or whatever. Mm-hmm. Kenny Pickett's the guy. you should probably also be aware that the chances you're right on that, given where everybody else is in this QB class, is pretty low, right? And if you try and trade back and maximize the value and still say we trade back to 9, we pick up a tackle in the second round, and we still think there's like an 85% chance we're drafting Kenny Pickett at 9. Something happens, somebody jumps up to 8, they screw you, right? Okay, so you move to the next guy, and there's probably not much of a difference. Because, like, Desmond Ridder, people think he's better anyway. So, like, there's probably a bigger chance that you were wrong on Kenny Pickett than there is that that was your one shot at getting this right.
Look, if we're being honest, if I'm Carolina, out of everybody in this QB class, like, I'm probably picking an offensive tackle at 6 and trading for Baker Mayfield, but seems like they're not going to do that. So there are so many things with Carolina where I go, hey, here's what I would do, but they're not going to do it.
And I understand why they don't want to trade for Baker Mayfield.
Well, the optics of it would look terrible. Yes. But how many other quarterbacks in this class would you rather have other than Baker?
Agreed 100%.
Right?
I'm just saying that, like, I understand why they won't do that. And I do disagree because I think I would. I think that's your best bet. But I understand, like,
especially because it's would you rather have Malik Willis at 6 or Baker Mayfield for a 5th?
Right, and
right. That's
no, I get
the part
it, but I understand that if you're them and you're basically like, oh, I know we tried this trick last year and it didn't work. We're going to do it again.
So
you're going to look like idiots.
So that's ultimately why people talk about Carolina maybe drafting an offensive tackle. I think Carolina is locked into taking a quarterback at 6. When we're talking like, what are we going to do for our mock draft simulations, all this kind of stuff. I think Carolina is absolutely locked into a quarterback at 6 because of what you just said, and also I've said this before. Scott Fitter did a Q&A with the Carolina Panthers over at Panthers.com. And he talked about a lot of different things. And he talked about draft needs. And he's like, well, when you look at it, we could use an offensive tackle, certainly. He's like, it's going to be a strength in the draft, right, where we're picking at 6. He's like, also could you, everybody talks about quarterback. We could definitely use a quarterback. And he mentioned quarterback second, I think on purpose. And then he said, you look at other positions too. He's like, Brian Burns, his contract's coming up, and even though we want to pick up the 5th-year option and like keep him around, you never know with money. He was scrambling so hard to come up with other things to get people off the trail that they would draft a quarterback that he brought up Brian Burns' name. Only way you bring up Brian Burns' name is if you are trying to throw everything at the wall to try to make people think that you're not taking a quarterback. When I read that he said Brian Burns, I'm like, they are taking a quarterback. They are trying he tried so hard to name everything that he possibly could that he brought up the best player on their team, not named Christian McCaffrey, but Christian McCaffrey's a running back. Okay, I get it. Debates. I just when he said that name, I was like, oh my God, they're drafting a quarterback. He just tried so hard to get us off of his trail, and it made it, to me, worse. I think they're drafting a QB.
I think they are as well. I think they've put themselves in a situation where they don't have an option.
No, because if you cannot go into next year with Sam.
So your only alternative is the one we've just said that they're not going to do. It's like, if you're not taking Baker Mayfield, all you can do is draft a quarterback at 6 because you don't pick again until 137.
Yeah.
So that's your alternative. Like, you either make a move for Baker Mayfield or you say we are drafting a quarterback at 6 because you can't start Sam Darnold again. Like, that would be absurd.
There's a lot of this is just, I said it before, but the Carolina Panthers and what they're currently in is going to be the classic case always against bargain shopping at quarterback. You can't do it. It so seldomly works out for you. You often have to allocate major resources in either the draft or either in salary cap capital to actually get a quarterback that is worth it for you. The examples of when bargain shopping for a quarterback work, and when I say bargain shopping for a quarterback, I even sometimes mean picking them in like 2nd and 3rd rounds. Like, there's a lot of evidence that says if you pick a quarterback in the 2nd, 3rd round, you're basically just wasting a draft pick.
Yeah.
You're basically just picking a quarterback just to pick a quarterback. Now, there are examples of that work, but there's a lot more examples of that like these dudes just never became anything.
Yeah.
So I always feel like if you have any kind of quarterback need at all,
I think certainly
don't wait. Do not wait.
I think certainly we've reached a stage where, like, if the reclamation project, if you're trying to pick up somebody else's reclamation project, you better not be planning on starting him, right? So Daniel Jones is going to be, or Baker Mayfield, Daniel Jones is going to be the next one that comes along, right? If Daniel Jones doesn't have a phenomenal year this year and the Giants pick up his 5th-year option and keep him around or whatever, Daniel Jones is going to get dumped, and there's going to be teams out there that take a look at Daniel Jones and go, I mean, we might be able to salvage that.
Mitch Trubisky.
Sure, but don't start him. Like, bring him in and like have him as your backup and do what the Raiders did with Marcus Mariota, and that works maybe.
Right.
Like, let's reset. Let's have him learn. Like, let's have him undo all of what he picked up over the last 4 years from the bench, where it doesn't do any harm, right? And where he gets some practice reps and he's not being under fire the whole time. But if your plan is to like pick that guy up, pick up his fifth-year option, throw him out there again, like the Panthers did with Darnold.
Trade for him after he was bad for 3 straight years. Pick up his fifth-year option immediately to screw yourself over. I mean, what was the wasn't it the Nick Foles thing where they signed into a contract because they didn't? Oh.
Yeah. They gave him more money than they could have, because if they didn't give him that volume,
it was
of money,
the Jags, right?
It was like it would have looked bad to the locker room.
It was the Jags, right? When the Jags signed Nick Foles, they gave him way more money than they should have, literally just for optics and emotional confidence.
They were like, it would have looked bad to the locker room if we'd only given him like $5 million a year. So we gave him more money.
I listen. There is a human element to all of this stuff. There are plenty of things that go into this that are much more of the human element and human situations that go into running football teams and making things work and making the locker room work and all that kinds of stuff. I fully recognize that. That stuff is hilarious to me. Bringing in a quarterback that you just traded for, like as if Carolina trading for Sam Darnold was already not enough a vote of confidence. Sam, we are trading for you on your rookie deal. We are going to put you in the best position that you can to go out and have a fantastic year. Let's freaking do it together. Let's get you your money next year. Why the hell would they have signed his 5th-year option? Yeah. The same thing with Nick Foles. Nick, we love what you did before. We're trading for you. We're bringing you in. We think that you can win a ton of football games. And if you do, we're going to incentivize your contract where you're going to make all this kinds of money and all this kinds of stuff. And also, how is that not the standard?
I mean, you can't, we hear all the time about, it's a business, and that's why there's been this like ruthless mathematical decision to cut a good player because he's earning $1 million a year more than you want him to. You can't like act like that and at the same time like double Nick Foles' salary just because we want the optics to look good to the locker room. Like, it's either, I mean, okay, I guess you can say, yes, this is a business, and like every business, there's some like massively dysfunctional elements in it. Right. But like, you can't act like that on the one hand and then just burn money for no reason whatsoever against the salary cap elsewhere. We could talk football draft all day, but we can't because the studio belongs to other people. So we got to get out of here. But thanks very much for standing in for Steve. Trevor Sikkema, host of the NFL Stock Exchange.
Indeed.
Go find that wherever you find your podcasts. We're done here for the week. We will be back on Monday, and Steve will be back on Monday, I believe. We'll get a debrief on how his golf went and whatever else ridiculous things they did in Palm Springs. But that's it for us for the week. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.